Welcome to Monkey and Frank. My name is Do and my body is Dom. And today we're continuing Matt's journey into his life and when it comes to the psychedelic. How are you doing, Matt?
I'm doing great, Dom. Thanks for having me back.
It's a pleasure. All right, so I wanted to start by kind of wrapping my head of where we were yesterday in the story. So, from what I gathered, um, you're you're a man that grew up where you had difficulties with your mother when it came to abuse or stuff like that, but in the knowing as well that your mom went through something very traumatic in her childhood. So we're not placing blame on anybody here. We're just telling the story. And as you went through life, you were a Christian boy. You believe in all of the teachings of Jesus, which I do as well. So beautiful. But I'm guessing that there was a part that was missing. You were trying to find yourself, trying to find a purpose. You were successful in business. You were successful when it came to women and dating. You were successful in pretty much any endeavors because you had the discipline that was instilled in you by your family, your dad, and I'm guessing. We didn't really talk about that, but we'll get into it. And you took a mushroom trip that we talked about yesterday in the podcast with this girl, and it really opened up your eyes and your awareness into all the teachings that you had accumulated in Christianity, but now you were seeing it like from a point of view of a child, which is so amazing. And then there was a 5 year period where you were still trying to find yourself because a mushroom had kicked your ass with the dragons that was looking at you and like, stop running away. I don't know what you're doing, which was really cool. Uh, so we were at the point where you were in Peru and you were starting to do your first ceremony with ayahuasca. But I want to pause that because I've got so many more questions about that 5 year period beforehand. So I hope you don't mind that I bring it back. I really want to explore more things. And the one thing I wanted to explore is your NDMA trips that you've done. I've done some NDMA in my past as well, and even before ayahuasca. And I want to hear your point of view on those trips or on those experiences that you had with MDMA. Do you mind talking about them?
Sure. Before I launch into that, let me make sure I've understood your summary of what we went over yesterday. You'd mentioned a 5 year period. So from the time I had my first mushroom, or really my first psychedelic experience, that was in 2014. And I went to the jungle in March of 2016. So there was only
Two
less than a
years.
2 year.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
my bad.
But no, it's okay. That we went over a lot of information, and as far as chronology, something's
Yeah.
gonna get missed along the way. Um, so, in regards to MDMA, man, it's interesting. My views on the that molecule have shifted over the years, but I do recall friends bringing that to me, and it was always in a party setting. Like going out to the club together and dancing, and I was pretty self conscious. I didn't like looking like a fool. I didn't know how to dance, and so I was one to usually sit on the sidelines um, until I had enough alcohol in me, or in this case, MDMA, and that inhibition, that fear of people looking at you goes down. So, um, as far as like the sensation of it all, like I I really enjoyed MDMA because it puts you so much in your body, and looking back in life, I had patterns of disassociation quite a bit. It hurt to be in my body a lot. Um, and especially with all the suppression that was going on of emotions. And so MDMA was a really enjoyable experience. I didn't so much enjoy the after experience, right? Because you release so much serotonin,
Oh yeah.
um,
You
and
get
you
so
get
tired.
deplete. Exactly. Sorry, my phone's tied to my laptop and it's doing its thing again.
No worries. I don't even hear a
Let me,
thing.
oh, good.
Yeah. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
So yeah, the foggy brain, the whole effect was one that I didn't enjoy, especially for someone who relied so much on like that prefrontal cortex, analytical mind focus and that you need to be productive in life, you know, in our society. So
Yeah, of
it was
course.
it was a initially it was one that I tried a few times and didn't use it thereafter. But
So
I've
what,
had a few.
sorry
Okay.
about that. So what changed in your perception when it came to alcohol? Because from the last time we had talked yesterday, or in the previous podcast, I mean, is alcohol was a no-go, and then somehow it changed after the mushroom trip. What happened there?
Um, alcohol. So if I led you to believe that things changed between the mushroom trip,
Oh, no, no, not no,
uh,
not the mushroom trip. Just at one point you were talking to me about like you started drinking really late. You took it once, and it's like, how do even people, like that feeling?
oh
I
yeah. So that was again my. I must have misled you in the chronology of things.
no worries.
I didn't have my first full alcoholic drink till I was 21, and it just I didn't see the appeal of it, right? So I did begin to have more drinking experiences around my college years,
Right.
and that's when more like social drinking and then it didn't become problematic looking back until probably 2015, and that was just because I was using it for self-soothing purposes.
Right. And
Um,
same with the
yeah,
MDMA, I guess. Not in you were not doing it in a medical sense where you wanted to kind of process your feelings. You were doing it to de-associate, to be able to fit in and have fun, I guess, right? Just a little bit of a
yeah,
break.
definitely like giving myself a break, right? Like and just curiosity. I'd hear these stories about like, oh, this is the love drug. You just feel so connected. And for somebody like myself at that time who felt so disconnected, that was the possibility to have a shortcut to that sounded great. And again, that experience of being flooded with feelings of connection and love. I remember standing in the club and only knowing a few people, right? My friends that were there with me, but looking out at the crowd, being like, all we need is love. That's what we all really want. And that was like an epiphany for me at the time. Uh, but it was transient, right? Like that connection left as soon as the peak experience of the drug was out of my body. So
I noticed that
uh,
myself as well. Like MDMA, if even like when I would resolve like deep trauma, it didn't really resolve them. It would just kind of show me light at the end of the tunnel, and then the work was left to me to kind of continue in a very tired
yeah.
way the next day or now when it came to your I sorry, I love the dragon parts, and I love when you were after the mushroom trip, what was your relationship with spirit? Like I know growing up as a Christian boy and like they talk about like the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Did you had any sense that spirit? Because I want to hear more about that.
So my relationship to spirit, there was a great disconnect, you know, between spirit, between God, the universe, and myself, or how I experienced myself. And that was in part what I was really searching for, looking back. So yesterday I had said, you know, I was searching for purpose. I was searching for God. I was searching for myself, my true self, and the religion, you know, I had grown up, like I said, in the Christian church, and I had the teachings, but like the teachings just kind of fell on deaf ears after a while. It's like, oh, I've heard this. Like the whole point of Christianity seems to save the lost. Like the world's lost, and there's this small group, or maybe not small, but you know, about 1 billion people who have the truth. Well, the majority of the rest of the world apparently don't. Um, and that just it wasn't that narrative that didn't sit right, but looking back, I just think it's kind of a silly narrative.
It's really
So
confusing. Yeah.
yeah, so but as far as like my relationship to spirit, um, I yeah, there was just it wasn't connecting for me anymore, and I had to acknowledge that, and you know that was what my looking at philosophy and um, I did read other books on different other, or I did read books in regards to like Hinduism and Buddhism and different spiritual books. but it just was more of an intellectual process. It didn't feel like there was any heart in it.
Right.
And
And did you feel
yeah,
like,
slight.
did you feel like hell messed you up a little bit? Or after a while, you really kind of put away that idea, like, oh, maybe hell is only here? Like, what was your relationship with hell?
Oh, that's a good question. You're saying the doctrine around hell within
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Christian church? Sure. I mean, essentially that divides divides the self in some way, right? It's like hell is this place, heaven is this place. Both are apart from you, separate from you, and so the narrative that I had was almost like a merit system for to a degree. It's like I have to, not sin. I need to watch my mouth. I need to watch my behavior, and if I mess up, then I need to ask for forgiveness. But then there's this constant like, am I really saved? Have I really been forgiven? I don't want to go to hell. So it impacts the psychology in like a way that like for me was super vigilant. It's like it's almost like very fear based, right?
yeah.
I'm afraid, so I need to be vigilant. Um,
Uh,
unwinding that unwinding that doctrine and doing so through experience was the only way I came out of it. And by that I mean there I had to catch myself almost like watching compulsive behavior going, I messed up, I need to ask for forgiveness. Okay, ask for forgiveness. I don't feel any better. Okay, that's honest. I don't feel any better. So maybe this what I'm feeling right now is hell. Maybe this is what, like, instead of it being a place that you end up, maybe it's a state of being. And so that it was almost like a dawning of an awareness, right? Like a realization. And then what were the implications of that? Well, the implications are that hell and heaven are states of being. Uh, then then I I have more questions than answers right now, and that kind of lent to, but yeah, that lent to more interest in spirituality again.
and philosophy, I'm guessing as well.
Yeah, and philosophy. And also, I will say what was great about the endeavor of looking into philosophies and different frameworks is that instead of being closed off, thinking you have or thinking I had the truth and that was the end all, it opens you up to realize that so many other thinkers have looked at the questions that we wrestle with of being human, of existing, and there was pain because having to shed old ways of thinking or challenge very established ways of thinking as being separate from God, as being, uh, like there's an angry God and a loving son, and there's a devil who wants to trip you up. All these forces happening outside of you, and having a paradigm shift to um, all of it is actually within. And yeah,
It's
so
pretty
I
cool that,
realized.
yeah. No, continue. Yeah.
Oh, I realize as I'm talking, I feel like I'm being quite vague in some areas. So feel free to,
Oh, no, no, no,
you know,
no. I'm gonna
hone in
continue
as you
put,
like.
yeah, yeah, I'm gonna poke in as much because you're piquing my curiosity so much because I'm seeing it from my point of view, and it's really beautiful to see that, even with this knowledge, it was as confusing as my journey. I didn't have none of this knowledge before going to ayahuasca. So, it gives me not hope, but like it opens me up to the paradox that everybody is going through some sort of, like you say, struggles within when it comes to the light, the dark, and everything that's external that's kind of pushing inside, like, hey, you need to believe this, you need to believe that, and especially come from your parents, right? So now you're like on your way to Peru. And I know that in Christianity, shamanism is like the devil, like straight up the devil. And
Mm-hmm.
you growing up that way. And now you need to hide everything from your family just to kind of find yourself. And like you, for me, it was a big thing of last resort. Like, I need to do something about this. I cannot sustain this type of life. It's crazy. So it's really beautiful seeing from what you're going through because you have all of the knowledge before going to ayahuasca. So I think we're ready. I think we're ready. for you to
Yeah,
continue the, yeah.
let me just say one thing in regards to uh, my family dynamic and religion. So within that time frame of me getting ready to go to Peru, and all that led up to it, what was very evident to me was my family did not have the answers that I was looking for. The religion of Christianity did not have the answers that I was looking for. It wasn't satiating, and neither of my parents had walked the path that I was walking as far as challenging belief systems. And that's not a critique, that was just a realization. And that's kind of a lonely place at the time, because your parents, are supposed to be in the role of being able to guide you. And I knew that this is what I meant by it takes courage. I knew that they wouldn't know what to do with um, my questions. I mean, I try to broach certain questions around depression and anxiety, and I get the history of the family from my mom, right? She'd share as much as she was comfortable with, but it was missing resolution, and so I was looking for resolution, and that's a key piece. I realized I couldn't find it where I was. Change is necessary,
And
and
also,
that's
it also speaks volume at how messed up our parents, your parents, are not necessarily messed up, but how confusing and lonely it must have been in their spirituality. You know, the,
yeah,
oh my God, right? And like I say, there is no blame towards them, all love,
right.
but it's something else. Wow.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, then I was also carrying a lot of anger and resentment that I felt, but wasn't able or willing to name. I felt resentful, but at the same time guilty that I felt that way towards my parents, because simultaneously I felt grateful for a lot of the opportunities they had given me, the love and support, of course, of my parents growing up. Um, I mean, both my parents were very involved in my teenage years, for sure, and adolescent years. But also resentment, feeling like they didn't prepare me for the real world in certain ways, and coping and other things. So, um, yeah, no blame really, but like at the same time, having to acknowledge the history that's there and what shaped the present moment and shaped um, the personality. So,
You're speaking the same language as me. It's so beautiful. Like you are a reflection of me, but in so many different ways. So are you ready to go back to Peru?
let's go back to Peru.
All right. So your first ceremony, or even before, I know you were talking a lot about the group and how awesome they were and how much diversity they were. So that must have been, uh, as much as the inner critic was talking to you and you were actually talking back to it for the first time, saying like, no, I need to do this. You're seeing other people that are going through the same thing as you from all walks of life. Tell me, continue. Yeah.
Yeah. So what comes to mind is the first afternoon, early evening that we were there. We were in the Maloka, and we were doing this exercise where you sit with one other person across from you and you keep eye contact, and really it's a practice of vulnerability and presence, um, something that I felt very uncomfortable with. But the beauty of this kind of work uh, is, you show up it's with all the fear and all the worries, and there's this transformative experience, uh, even before the ayahuasca, really. So I remember sitting across from this guy, and sadly I don't remember his name at the moment, um, but he was just looking at me like I felt like he was piercing my soul, and I had not allowed myself to be seen in that way, without words, of course, just sitting and looking. Um, but I think that was like a little breadcrumb, or another inching closer to being open for the work that was ahead with Madre, being vulnerable with self and being vulnerable with others. And that's exactly what the ayahuasca retreat container and preparatory work is, right? Getting you ready to be as vulnerable as you can for the most depth and transformative experience. So um, from there, and again, there were 17, 18 people um, who were doing this exercise that it was really establishing trust in the group, because you're about to go through some really deep work together. And again, as I said in the previous podcast, themes of abuse, neglect, sexual traumas, all and more came up. And to know that you're not alone in what you're feeling, what you're experiencing, what you have experienced, uh, I think was a really key piece to the preparatory part of the journey
And
before
right
drinking.
and right now
And I
you're
also,
oh, sorry. Continue.
oh, and one more thing is, and I think it's, in order to really let go in that kind of a setting, you have to know that you're safe, right? We
Yeah.
have our safeguards. We have our protector part of ourself that won't let us drop our guard no matter what, unless we know that there are people who are trustworthy around us who will catch us in some way. And I think that was another part of the practice. Not so much with the participants who were going to be drinking, because obviously we're going to be under the medicine. We're not in a place to take care of each other. Um, but even with the facilitators, with the shamans, with the founders of the retreat, building up a rapport in a short amount of time is no easy task. So that says a lot about the people who are doing the work as well. So
100%. But now I feel like you're talking in hindsight. But at the time, I know that you really waited until the very last week to kind of start eating well and no sex and to do
oh yeah.
the work because of the circumstances of your situation. But while you were doing that exercise of staring into the other person's soul, how successful were and not successful, but like how did it feel? Like was it very difficult at that time, or like I want to, if you can walk me through it, like your sensation, because that's something else.
Yeah, it was we got a little horn support. Um, it was very uncomfortable, and it was uncomfortable. Like as I said, I felt like someone was piercing into my very insecurities, but I saw no judgment. I felt no judgment. I just felt the fear of being seen.
Yeah.
The right there was where I'm used to having my guard up in some way at that point, having a filtered, giving a filtered experience, right? Like if you think of if you think of how we interact, a lot of times we only show parts of ourselves because it's safe to do so around certain people, and that's just the reality of that point in my life. I was showing only parts of myself, so that was a moment where I felt very uncomfortable, but still safe.
Because that
Yeah.
practice seems so valuable in the day-to-day life. Like I'm thinking to even implement that myself tonight. So can you tell me a little bit, how did they preface that exercise so that if anybody out there wanted to start getting their heart opened and being observed, by another fully, how would they go through that? How did they show it over there?
That's a good question. It's been really about 5 years since I've thought about that exercise. But what I recall is it was important to, so we sat one from another, and we selected our partner. We put our hand over the heart of the person across from us, and we kept eye contact. And just that very act, keeping the eye contact, keeping the hand over heart, you can feel the person's breathing. And so there's this synchronicity that occurs of like a joining of organisms, and you're breathing and you're there with one another. And I think that was another piece. I know that was a piece that helped trust, because you get out of your mind. You're in the body more. You're in each other's bodies in a way, syncing with one another's bodies, and with a perfect stranger who
Yeah.
becomes family and tribe very quickly. And that is, again, it's a dance to go retrospectively and remember, or to look back and see what was happening versus what I was experiencing. I wasn't aware of all this at the time, the way I'm giving language to it, but that is what was happening. We were synchronizing. And what I do know is how I felt. And I felt scared, but safe. And that was, yeah, that was quite a moment.
And was there did they put like a specific timer, like 2 minutes, 5 minutes? How long were you able to last?
You, they didn't put a timer on it.
Okay.
I would say though this exercise probably went on for about 15 minutes,
Oh,
and
wow.
even there was no talking. You're holding space with each other, hand on heart, breathing, synchronizing your breath, and just looking. And I do recall getting instructions of just love the person, see yourself in the person across from you. So it's also an exercise in de-othering, right? Um,
Yes.
yeah, and that's also very helpful for the work, because we have these personality structures, our identities that we believe are separate, that make us separate. But this work would suggest otherwise as you go deeper and deeper into it, deeper and deeper into yourself. So
That's beautiful. Yeah, continue your journey. Wow.
sure. Um, so that was one of the key exercises that I recall leading up to our first ceremony, which happened evening number 2. And I'm gonna jump into the ceremony, and kind of just give some backdrop. Um, so you come to the maloka, which is the sacred space where you drink the medicine, that is administered by the ayahuasqueros, the shamans. And you show up. We showed up about 45 minutes before taking the medicine, and we were instructed to show up quietly. Don't talk. It's about staying inward, staying with your breath, staying with your intention for why you were there. And for me, my intention was to understand and release the depression and anxiety, and sadness. Really, it was at that time I just called it sadness. It was like this cloak of sadness that I was felt overwhelmed by, and I wrote it on a piece of paper when I entered the Maloka. In the center of the Maloka, there was these beautiful tables with crystals and some candles, and so we were invited, if we liked, to put our intention on the altar. And I put my piece of paper with what I wanted to release, and that was the sadness. So I was very nervous, but also excited for the possibility of healing. I'm gonna take a moment and see if these sirens pass. I don't know if you can hear that or not.
Yeah, but it's amazing. I actually love it. And it gives
Perfect.
me a time as well to ask a question. Did you choose your place or did they assign you a place?
Yeah. So that was what was cool, is you get to choose your spot every night, every ceremony. There was no assigned spot. Um, so you very often were sitting next to new faces, and it was instructed that couples sit in opposite parts of the room so as not to be distracted by their desire to take care of one another and to stay focused on themselves, because that's the work they were there to do. So uh, I was sitting next to many different faces, so I couldn't tell you this ceremony who was next to me, but um, as you'll hear in this ceremony, I feel bad for whoever was next to me.
That's
You'll
okay.
see why. So, I mean, I don't really feel bad anymore, but I remember at the time. So the intention was set. I put my intention on the altar. I went and sat on my mat. And as you know, we have mats. They're like 6 inches, and some pillows, and made myself comfortable. And just sat breathing and trying to not let my mind get the best of me, because my mind doesn't know what's going to happen. So you hear the internal chatter of, oh my god, I hope it doesn't taste so bad. I hope, hope the ayahuasca doesn't taste too bad. I hope that I get enough and that I really have a breakthrough. I don't want to keep living in this way. And like I'm just so many different noises and narratives coming out of the mind. And then that practice that we had done with centering self and staying with your breath came in handy to kind of calm and just be still as much as I knew how at the time. And so going forward, about 45 minutes in, all but one candle was extinguished, and the shamans entered and they blessed the medicine with an ikiros, and then they came to each one of our mats to administer the medicine. Whereas when you and I went to Arcana, we would go up and take the dose in front of the shaman.
Yeah.
Um,
But
they came.
before you continue, uh, did because yes, in the other podcast you were talking about when your ego is ready to die is when you feel almost like suicidal, where you were you at that point in the beginning of that ceremony? So because I want to know if your ego was fighting you to the core, or was it really wanted to let go, like it was it ready, you know what I mean?
I recall, if I put myself back in that place, I recall the greatest fight of my ego, as far as like trying to protect self,
Yes.
where was the night before arriving at the center. By the time I made it to the center, um, it was like I knew the decision was done. I wasn't going back. So I didn't have the conflict. It was now more of just the uncertainty of like, I don't know what to expect. And like learning how to be okay with that. I don't know what to expect, but I'm here and I'm going to have an experience that's new. Um,
Perfect. Yeah, that's I
yeah,
now I'm in your shoes. All right, continue.
for sure. Um, so the shamans come around to the in front of our mat, and they don't ask you what dose size you want at the center. They just, the shamans, I guess, looked at you, had an idea of what you needed, and then they would give you the medicine. And I remember being told to, like, don't taste it, just shoot it back. So that's what I did. But um, it was just so potent, and it was like acidic, and it was not a pleasant drink in
And can you
my what's
yeah,
that?
and can you tell how much he gave you about? Like half a cup, a full cup?
So as far as, yeah, I'd say they were using like a 6 ounce or 4 ounce cup, and I think I had half of that, so maybe 2 ounces, maybe 3 ounces
Right.
of ayahuasca, and it was very thick, very very thick. Um, and for the next 40 minutes, I sat like trying not to throw it back up. To be honest, it made me a bit nauseous, and so I just sat with it. And I mean, as someone who drank a lot for the few years leading up to my ayahuasca trip, um, throwing up from drinking too much alcohol was not a new thing for me. But I got to the point where I'm not throwing up. I've decided I'm not vomiting, and like I could somewhat control that. It felt like, and so here's here's all my hard work with alcohol paying off. Apparently, I was I was able to keep myself from throwing up in that 45 minutes, um, and then I now that I'm talking, I do remember who was sitting next to me. I had my buddy. His name's Alan Montfair, and he is from New Zealand, and he was sitting to the right of me, and he was having the time of his life, and he's describing what he was calling like his highest self, and I'd never heard this language until this retreat. And he's like, "Oh my God, I can see you guys all from the higher room. Like I see you all down here. You're so beautiful." And I was like, I was feeling the medicine, but I wasn't gone. Like I wasn't off of my own world or on another plane of existence. And I just remember being like, "Oh my God, I want whatever that guy has got. Like I'm not getting any of that. This guy's having a great time." And so it
Well,
was just
so what were the rules when it came to talking? Like
so
yeah.
yeah, we were encouraged to be mindful of your neighbor, because as you get, if you're talking or singing or being loud, it can disrupt other people's process. And the reality of that's great advice, and it's good to be mindful. But the reality is, as we journey in and experience certain realities, we lose control of that sometimes. We lose control of worrying about what others think or other people's processes on this medicine. And that, I guess that's the benefit of having a facilitator come over and remind, there was many times on this journey that I was told to please be mindful because apparently I was talking talking too loud. I know Alan was talking too loud, but I thought it was funny. It didn't bother me. Um, so moving through this ceremony, I didn't get any lessons that were apparent in this ceremony. I didn't go deep. I didn't go far. So what I did get, I had little fractals come through, and I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. This is beautiful, but this is kind of this stuff that I saw in mushrooms. And then I noticed kind of disappointment setting in. It's like, I came all the way down here for deep healing. I don't get all the hype yet. So then there was a second call to come where you could request another dose of ayahuasca, and there was a cutoff time. So we took medicine at 8 p.m. and by I think 11 p.m. you could do your last dose or second dose. And I was apparently right at the cusp. And I asked the facilitator if I could have another dose, and he's like, yeah, I can make that happen. So he came over and gave me a second dose. And you know what? I had an internal dialogue of, should I really take a second dose? Like, stuff was nasty. It didn't do anything. I'm not really impressed with this experience. But then this is the like talking to different aspects of self. I said, no, you know what? I'm here to do work. I'm taking more. And it wasn't like I'm chasing an experience. It was, if this is medicine, and this is the work I'm here to do, as long as I'm not putting myself at risk toxically, then why not take more? Why not try to go deeper? So I did. And I continued to get nauseous. And this time I began to purge. So throwing up. And I threw up for the next off and on 2 hours
Oh my
to the
God.
point where I was just dry heaving. And it felt eventually like there was energy just rolling, like stuck energy snaking out of me. And this is a common description, I guess, for people who are purging. You'll hear people say that they purge snakes. They've seen snakes come out of them, that kind of thing. And that can be quite scary or jarring for sure. I didn't get any of that. I didn't have any visual hallucinations on this ceremony. I had just the sensation of body release, just completely purging out. And I was so exhausted.
Did it
So exhausted.
did it feel good, or was it like puking as if you were drunk?
Um, it was nothing like being drunk. It did feel, I wouldn't say it felt good. It was a release, right? It's a catharsis for sure. It felt challenging. It literally felt like I was moving and shedding something within myself, and it was work. Almost, and I know this is me taking liberties, but it was almost like giving birth to something or release. Like that's the only thing I can really say.
There was purpose behind it. Like you felt like I can do this. There's purpose. Let's like you were doing work, and was there a point like you wanted to give up, or you said,
Oh
I'm
yeah.
here. Oh yeah, okay.
Oh yeah. Sorry. I mean, oh yeah. I wanted kind of how I had touched on with my psilocybin experience. It's like I want out of this. I was more like, when will this stop? Because it was again a couple hours. Now I was at one point, Dalmam, I was in front of my mat. Matt was in front of his mat on all fours, just head over my bucket, dry heaving. Sorry for anyone who's listening to me reenact my hurling, but into this bucket. But there's nothing visibly coming out. I just felt I was making way for all kinds of things that I was holding on to. Just so that experience lasted until I'd say 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. And I was awake till almost sunrise and just utterly exhausted. And if you have questions, go ahead and ask. Otherwise, I'll continue to move the storyline along.
No, continue. I mean, no, continue. I want to,
Okay.
because I feel you, man. I feel you 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So the next day, every morning after ceremony, you have breakfast and do a flower bath. And the flower bath is about protection and good energy. and the shamans do this ceremony with each person. Um, it's really beautiful. And then you do a group share. So we meet. We all, it was
Oh,
great. It was
wait. You're cutting up, my friend. All
oh,
right. Go. Yeah, go. You can
can you hear me?
continue. I think you're back. Yeah.
Sure. There was like a sharing stick. We each had this beautiful like eagle feather on top of a stick, and whoever held the stick would share what their experience was. And I was somewhere in the middle of the Maloka, and everybody returns to the place where they sat the night before. Um, sorry, somewhere in the I was somewhere in the middle of the circle, not the Maloka, but the circle, and I heard people's stories of like, I went to the darkest hell. It was really scary. I confronted traumas of rape or of physical abuse, and some. It wasn't so. You saw again these themes of trauma coming up, but then there was also, I was speaking with God. I was speaking with the universe, angels, entities, and they were like they were upgrading my DNA. Like, this is the language I'm hearing. And I was like, wow, that is insane. I had none of that. And so
How,
when it came back to, oh, go ahead.
no, how did you're probably gonna say it. I'm so curious. How did you feel about that? Like, yeah, I had none of that, but was it jealousy? Was it anger? What was it? Tell me.
It wasn't jealousy or anger. It was sadness, because I thought, if, uh, if they got all that and I had nothing but me throwing up.
Oh wait, you're cutting up again, my friend. Let me pause. All right, we're back.
So I was feeling sadness because I thought maybe I can't be helped. Maybe what I'm feeling is just the indicator that I'm broken, and nothing can really make that better. Um, so I remember sharing this with the group and being encouraged by facilitators that, you know what, a lot of people experience what you experienced. And very often the first ceremony is a clean out ceremony where ayahuasca wants to work with you, is ready to work with you, but your body is not in a state where it can. So you're in the clean out stage. And that part of me wanted, I mean, obviously part of me believed it, but the other part of me was skeptical, It's like, because if by chance I have to experience that again, of me just throwing up for hours straight, I don't think I can do it. And I was saying this to them, and they were so sweet. The facilitator, his name was Easy. And he said, no one's going to force you to drink. I really encourage you to, like, the ceremony is not till tonight. This is in the morning that we're having this conversation. And I said, okay, I'll sit with it. Um, and
What was your, at this point in your life, your ability to cry? Where were you at? Were you able to cry, or was it something still that was crazy difficult?
I had I had made a decision in my adolescent years that I would not cry, for fear of being seen as weak, and being reinforced in me through coaches and different mentors in my life. Um, so that was still something that I operated from. I had not cried in who knows how many years, probably a decade, I'd say.
And during
Um,
the sharing of with the stick, were you able to cry at this point, or was it just pure
no,
sadness?
no,
Okay.
crying was not on the table for me at that point. Everything was internalized as this sadness that I
Uh,
was carrying.
All right. All
Yeah,
right. Okay. Continue. Yeah.
sure. So getting the encouragement from Easy, great name by the way, Easy, uh, to hang in there, and that him normalizing my experience essentially, and letting me know that I'm not alone in that. A lot of people experience the clean out, and it is very rigorous. And essentially that this is like the warrior work. You showed up, you were courageous, you feel like you're getting beat down, um, but it's darkest before the light kind of thing. And so all that was very encouraging. And I literally felt depleted though. I mean, I ate breakfast, ate lunch. I didn't really feel like my strength came back to me until mid-afternoon. And um, it was beautiful. So, other people who were much more, well, I would say they were further along in their spiritual work, just rallied around me and encouraged me, supported me. And we ended up, one of them was a yogi named Matthew Julian. Uh, and he's a yoga instructor as well. So he led me in some yogic breath that helped center me. And then there was a rapé ceremony happening that afternoon, unorganized by the facilitators. It was rapé that was brought in by some of the participants. And are you familiar with what rapé is, Dom?
I do, because I went to Peru. But yeah, were you aware of rape at this
I
point?
was, no, all of this is new to me. So um, I thought, well, at the very least, I'll watch, and it's beautiful to be a part of this ceremony. But I'm decided if I'll take it. And that was what's so cool about these spaces is there was not pressure to do it. It was just like, yeah, feel free to sit and support and love and be here. So I watched as
Was it the liquid rape or the powdered?
it was the tobacco powder.
Okay.
So they had the long wooden, it looks like a flute, right? And
Yeah.
they place it up your nose, and another person blows the powder up into your nose. Um, and
Before
I
you
watched.
continue, sorry,
Yeah,
I've got so many questions. Uh,
sure.
how did you feel about meant to be at this point? Like, is
How
that
did
some,
I?
yeah, is that something that that you kind of had in your, because I know like when you look for spirituality, you look for the self, you try to, when you find a little bit of this higher power, you kind of turn to, oh wow, it seems like there's so many coincidences that it can't just be coincidence. Or, did you ever experience that? Because I'm trying to really get into how you felt.
At this point, I was not aware of synchronicity. Um, at this point, I was not thinking in terms of meant to be or acknowledging the support around me as meant to be, I guess. It would, specifically at this point, I'm feeling depleted and uncertain, even more so. Uh, but simultaneously watching a beautiful community, uh,
Yeah. All right. Perfect.
of,
Yeah.
of support for one another. So, um, the rape ceremony I watched as people inhaled this this snuff, essentially this tobacco, and their reaction was not very encouraging. Like they're kind of coughing and blowing their nose, and black stuff is coming out on the tissue, um, and then a couple minutes pass, and you see like the response is positive. Like even though their eyes they're teared up, there's black tobacco on their Kleenex. Um, they were reporting feelings of ecstasy and peace, and I was like, well, what the hell? I'm here. I will try it after all. I think there were 6 different people before me that did it, and none of them died, so that was worth it to me. I'm gonna give it a go. Um, and they placed the little pipe in my nose, and I just kind of braced myself for it. And when they blew that tobacco up my nose, it was kind of like a 2-second gap period of this thing that happened, and then a burning sensation that was going on in my head. But then it started to travel down through my throat into my chest, and just like this vibration that filled my entire body. And it was like the singing bowls, or they're like wom
Yeah.
wom
Yeah.
wom
Yeah.
wom, and it was just permeating throughout my chest to where it got to be too much. And there was I heard a pop in my chest, and for a moment I thought something broke, but I like did a quick check and was like, no, nothing. But I feel amazing. I feel so good, and I'm not filtering any of this. This is actually what I'm saying to the group. And there's big smiles, and yes, this is a heart opening medicine. It's very heart opening, and I felt so good after that. Excuse me. I was still apprehensive going into ceremony, but it was, I wasn't depleted. And I just felt more connected in some way to self, more connected to this group of people who had supported me and encouraged me to have this experience with them. Um,
And
and I
that
had no idea that tobacco could have that effect. I'd always, I thought of tobacco, chewing tobacco, smoking tobacco, um, a negative, a negative effect, not a ceremonial one. So
that's crazy. So I feel like that's really important as well. Like the knowledge that when you're messed up, when you create trauma in your body, it's actually physical. And when you go through spiritual experiences, often you're going to get physical results, like a pop here, like you said, in your heart. Like there was actually something blocking the heart and you heard this pop. That's crazy. That's amazing. And the other thing is, did you know that tobacco was a master plant at that time?
I did not, and I had not heard the term master plant, teacher plant. This language was foreign to me.
Wow. Yeah, continue.
It's not anymore though. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and so this is this is an example of how I had an experience that now informed my language. And so when you use the language teacher plant, master plant, I would, I would have said, wow, yes, that's fitting. Like I've never had a plant open my heart, and I've never felt such a physical shift in such a short amount of time without a negative effect. Like the next day, I didn't feel any like hangover from it. Right. I felt, if anything, like my awareness was sharper after this ceremony with Rape. Excuse me.
That's okay.
So going into the evening, like there was this excitement for me because I'd already felt relief. It's almost like there was this pressure that had been built up, and it was the normal in me, right? That anxiety. And something had opened a valve and dissipated it. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. This had a real effect with real change in a very short amount of time. And there's no arguing for me short term. That felt great, right? So going into the ceremony that night, my intention was the same. This sadness, this cloak of sadness, I want to release this. I want to know, like, is this me? Am I really just broken? Or are there experiences along the way that have shaped this in me? Can I be redeemed? Can I be resolved in some way to be whole again? And so that was the intention. And, we showed up to the Maloka, same setup. There's candles in the ceremonial altar at the center. The shamans blessed the medicine. And this time they gave me, I'd say, about 3/4 of the cup of medicine. And for some reason, I decided to start like singing, chanting very, very low key as they sung the opening Ikiros. And I recall my neighbor being a little agitated, and I don't blame her, because the idea is you're supposed to be quiet and respect the process of everybody else.
Do you remember where the singing came from? Was it only in your throat, or did you feel it from the center of your heart? Or if you can even remember, really.
Yeah, I'm recalling how it felt. I remember singing as a way to move about things, the nervousness and apprehension that I felt going into the ceremony. So that was where it was coming from, as like a way to resolve and move that energy around, that angst that I was feeling.
And that
And it,
concept of energy, I know that it's because you had read that book before, so you kind of had that, and plus the rape maybe, or the mushroom. What was the, is there something that made it so that you kind of felt like energies were real other than, like, I want to know more about that.
yeah, definitely the literature that I had been reading the years previously shifted and informed my language to where it felt more true for me to say energy, because everything is energy, not just in a woo-woo sense. We know, even science won't, the scientific method, empirical science won't argue this, that everything is energy and the law of conservation. Things recycle and take different forms, but it's all the same
I get it.
molecules,
So
right?
it was
So,
easier to accept because science was actually backing it up, like society.
well, that affirmed that language, but I it just sat better with me than I guess my Christian language of like trying to think what I would have liked. Yeah, I don't even recall the language I used before saying energy. I think I just called everything like I divided everything up, right? God and the the world, the corporeal world, and there's this separation. Energy was like the first step towards interconnectedness. If everything's energy, then well, there's differentiation in form. It's the same thing, or it's like the same alphabet but different words, right? It rearranges in different letters, but it's the same alphabet. So, um,
So yeah,
does
like
that?
yeah, no, it's I think what you're trying to say is like uh because well, to me anyways, is energy is your feelings at this point, like going into the ceremony, like your feelings are that energy, whatever you're feeling, presence kind of thing, that's what you were trying to move with your singing.
What I was trying to dissipate or address and move was the angst I felt. The knowing that I didn't know where I was going,
Right.
right, with this ceremony, where ayahuasca would take me. Also, the angst of will I have another 4 to 6 hour ceremony of me just throwing up? All that apprehension was there. So the singing was to address the uh, the fear and uncertainty.
And where did you
And
feel that fear and uncertainty inside of your body? Is there a specific place?
yeah, yeah, good question. I felt that in my gut, and I even now I carry stress when I'm holding on to tension. I hold a lot of it in my lower abdomen.
Right. Right. Okay, good.
Sure. Yeah, good questioning. Um, so we take the sacrament, the medicine, and about 20 minutes in, my mind's doing the mind things, and the mind things in this case are, did we drink enough? That was really gross. Even if we didn't drink enough, are we going to want to ask for a second dose? Like going through the dance, right? And and then like reminding myself, just breathe, stay with the breath, and then my mind chiming in, has it been long enough? Has it been 30 minutes? Usually they said 40 minutes, and then that just stay with the breath, just and it was funny because I remember the shaman singing, and there was like this shift of awareness from my mind going, did we take enough? Are we there yet? Do we need more? To why does the jungle sound like it's inside of the Maloka? And the sound of insects, the sound of animals. It wasn't just that it's background noise. Suddenly, the outside was inside. It was so loud, but not in a painful way. It was just right there. And my mind went, "Oh, we're not in Kansas anymore. We're 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 feeling the effects of this medicine." And as my mind like identified that, I started to whirl downwards, like unwind, untangle. So I had this when I closed my eyes, a lot of this, my eyes were just closed. I had this red and blue not vortex, helix unwinding. And many people report seeing DNA, and it could have been DNA, but I saw this like untangling. And as I followed it down, getting more and more immersed into this helix, I lost awareness of the Maloka and the outside world. Um,
So you break through. And were you still humming or singing at this point, or you had kind of dropped that as soon as?
it was as if the songs of the shaman, the Ikiros, were guiding me, leading me down into these, we'll call it DNA for now, I guess.
Sure.
Were leading me down this helix. And as I went down the helix, um, the Ikiros became more all encompassing. Like the sounds and notes and cadence of each of the of their song was reality suddenly. making my reality. It was shaping my reality. So there was no awareness of the jungle. There was no awareness of Matthew. There was no awareness of the shamans in the room except for their song. And yeah, it was really, really quite an experience at that point. And there was no mind going, wait, what is this? It was as if the song was me and it had overridden that part of self that wants to control or make sure we're safe. There was no concern of safety anymore. So,
That's so
I,
amazing when you're full of angst. It's such a beautiful process that you're explaining. Wow.
yeah, that and all of that dissipated, or that became not even background noise. Like the only reality was the song that was being sung, and and I saw shapes that were like it's almost as if the song took on form or shapes. So that's what I mean by the song became my reality.
Magic.
Um, yeah, magic. That is the word I used a lot, especially early on after this experience. I was like, man, magic is real. This is magical. Uh, so I also this is where I'll say I lost all sense of any linear story. I couldn't tell you what happened in what order, but I can from here I can share different experiences that happened along this ceremony. I just don't know the order that they
Oh,
unfolded. If
please.
you,
Oh, doesn't
yeah.
matter. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
So there was a moment in my ceremony where I my body was just releasing so much, right? And it was in the form of laughter, right? So I was just drunk with laughter, and it brought me out of the songs and brought my awareness back to the Maloka, and I was enraptured in it. And apparently I was laughing so loud that I was disrupting the ceremony, and I could hear other people start to laugh, right? It was like one of those contagious things. It
Yeah.
ripples throughout the whole Maloka. And so the facilitator came over as I'm like, so I did cry, but it was from laughter. I'm laughing so hard, tears are streaming down my face as my body's just releasing all this pain and energy that I've held on to. And it's like ayahuasca's got this huge feather and she's just tickling me all over. and and the facilitator says, "Hey Matthew, we're going to take you to the back room." They had a back room where people could rest, you know, if their journey was getting to be too much or they just needed some separation from the music, from the people. But in this case, I wasn't being asked really. They needed to move me out of the ceremony because it was such a loud
But
laughter.
it's funny how, because to me, what I'm seeing is that because of your inability or your blockages of crying, it had to come out somehow. And it came out in a form of laughter, which is so amazing. But the problem is that laughter is so contagious compared to if you hear somebody puking beside you, you're not going to be, well, maybe, but, or if you hear somebody cry, well, maybe as well, but laughter is a lot more contagious than the two previous one that I just, puking or crying. So I
Yeah.
understand, and it's so wise to just like, yeah, you need to go through this. Let's move you. And how did you feel about that when they took you to that other
Oh,
room?
I was, I yeah, that's a good. I thought it was all fun. I mean, I was in no place. I wasn't even arguing really. I I didn't realize I didn't have my head about me. So when they said, "Hey, we're gonna move you to the back," I thought they were asking me like, "Hey, do you want to go to the back?" And I was like, "No, no, I'm good right here. I'm loving this. This is great." And then they're like, "Oh no, no, we have to take you to the back because it's disrupting other people's ceremonies." Oh, okay. And like I have no concept of volume control or other people. So I'm sure I was being very loud in my laughter and my talking, but it took three facilitators to pick me up and carry me across the Maloka to this back room. And I'm laughing the whole way. And I can hear people behind me laughing too, which encouraged me to laugh even more. And
Yeah.
so I, I didn't spend too much time in that back room. And the medicine, we were going pretty deep, so I was ebbing and flowing in and out of being aware of the Maloka and being off in other realms and different spaces. So
But
that
it's
was
but like the laughter though, like it was a form of healing. Like it was just not laughter to laugh. Like you could feel stuff that was getting processed inside that laughter.
absolutely, yes. It was very healing. Very, it was so releasing, cathartic. Um,
Almost
So as I
crying,
said,
laughing, right? You're
oh,
laughing so much you're crying at this point.
exactly. Yeah, I was laughing so hard, tears were coming down, and I, yeah, it was like one of those things where I would turn over because I'm already laying down. I'm like doubled over on my side, laughing so hard, and yeah, it is a very physical experience at times, and that's to your point. I wasn't permitting myself to cry, so that release had to come out another way, and it was a very enjoyable way. I still like can feel that in my body, and like it makes me laugh. It makes me smile. It was so beautiful, and it speaks also to the way ayahuasca will work with you. She can be very soft. She can be very playful, and she can also be harsh, just like a mother needs to be at times with you.
And while
Uh,
you were laughing and you were coming in and out of seeing with your eyes open the Maloka or that room now, when you would close your eyes, you would go back into like crisp hallucination of, would you see a little bit of what you were processing, or was this just random hieroglyphic? Like, I want to know more about that.
you're saying when I was having the
Yeah,
laughter release, was
yeah,
I getting visuals?
yeah. Like when you would close your eyes, would you get visuals? And when your eyes were open, did you have visuals as well? Like how? Yeah.
Yeah, it ebbed and flowed during that time. So what had brought me into that fit of laughter, I couldn't tell you what the imagery was. I know there was imagery. I think that's what kind of made me laugh. Is like it's almost like ayahuasca told me a joke through imagery, and it got me to start laughing. And it's like once I was laughing, she just started like tickling me. I mean, I'm trying to give you a metaphor here of what was going on, but
Yeah, yeah,
there
yeah.
wasn't a specific storyline unfolding at that point. I think it was in the same way that I was throwing up to purge and make room for her to work with me and heal me. This laughter was another degree of that, right? She was making room, helping me make room, make space for the healing so we could get to the areas of trauma within me that I wasn't connected to, that I had overlooked. So it was more of clearing space within self.
What a
Um,
contrast. Puking to
yes,
laughter. Wow. All right.
yes, yes, exactly. That's exactly right. And it also kind of like talk about the love and grace of ayahuasca with the first ceremony, just throwing up, feeling exhausted, like I don't know if I really want to do this, and then getting the support and courage of my tribe and the facilitators, and um, the support of Rape, opening heart, and then suddenly I'm still having a cathartic release, but it's laughter, it's joyful, it's fun,
So
and it's the complete opposite experience
so that
of the
brings
first night.
me to the question of, do you feel like that first night, because you had like your internal struggles, you had the trip that you had, or was it, and then on the second trip, going into it, you felt a lot more light, you just had rape? Is your state of mind an influencer, you think, or is it fully madre that's controlling the show here? Do you think that you have a part to play? Like for anybody that would go, how is your mindset going in? Do you think that it played a part, or is just a journey and you're there for the ride?
So you're asking me if I think the state of mind has an influence on the experience of the journey?
Yes.
uh, yes, there absolutely.
Okay.
um, in short, yes. I would I'm not saying that you can manipulate your journey by changing the dials of your state of mind. I'm just saying that like each of each of these experience each of these experiences and ceremonies have an impact on your state of mind and state of being. And as you'll hear, and as you're hearing in this recount or reaccount of my ceremony, the first ceremony was so different than the second one, um, and my state of mind was different. The so yeah, I'm trying to elaborate more, but I'm realizing, in short, yeah, I think your state of mind has an effect on the journey. I don't think it controls the journey. I just
No,
think
yeah, I hear you 100%. And I have that same impression, but I wanted to know from your point of view because hey, the contrast is so huge. Like it. it's kind of like, and now I'm really curious about your third and your fourth ceremony, but yeah, continue your journey if you have more to say, because that
Oh,
is
there's
amazing.
yeah, there's we're just scratching the surface. This ceremony that I'm recalling right now was the most profound one
Oh,
that I
continue.
to
Yeah.
me. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
um, yeah, it was the most profound for me. So
You're in that
the
room. You're laughing.
oh, so no, sorry. As I said, being in the back room, I didn't stay there long. Eventually, I came back out with some assistance and laid back down on my mat and let the just kind of sunk back into my body, and I noticed it felt good to be in my body. Something I hadn't noticed before. You know, being someone who was always disassociating, wanting to be out of this experience. It felt good to be in my body. So I just breathed and sunk into my body, and I noticed the music was taking me, the songs of the shaman were taking me inward again, and I just let it. There was no concern. I knew that I was safe. I was in good hands, and so the ability to surrender was felt very easy.
Did
Um,
Which song were you more attracted to, the female song or the male song, or both were
no,
a
there was
song?
yeah. Sorry, I realized I jumped back
No, no,
in the
no, no.
podcast format. I go
Of,
too quick.
of course not. Of course,
Um,
you're not. You're doing perfect. It's me. I feel like that's got so much curiosity that I'm interrupting your flow. So don't feel bad. It's me that feels bad.
I don't recall feeling more drawn to the male Ikiros or the female Ikiros. They were so interwoven
Okay.
beautifully.
Okay. Okay.
And I will say, so where the medicine took me next, it was deeper within. And that does not do justice for me to say deeper within, but we're going inward. So my eyes are now closed and I'm listening to the Ikiros. And once again, the Ikiros are starting to take on a world, like giving shape to a world, to where I'm not interested in what's going on in the Maloka. I'm not even aware of the Maloka anymore. And then, I become aware that I'm not aware of the Maloka, which sounds funny. And in doing that, I open my eyes, and then everyone's kind of sitting still on their mat, sitting still, and even the shaman, they're not singing. It's almost like me opening my eyes, stop the singing, and I can hear a plane in the distance coming over the Maloka. And that wasn't anything odd because the retreat center is only like 40 minutes by scooter to the airport. And I can hear this. So you'd hear planes throughout the day going over the retreat center. So this plane's going over, but instead of staying distant and going by, it's getting closer and closer. And I thought, oh man, this is kind of odd. Usually it's not so close. It sounds like it's flying really low. And as I'm having this thought, this plane gets roaring loud, and it's almost like it hits the Maloka, and the whole Maloka shakes. And my mind's not doing any like, well, this is weird. It's just like it's almost like being in a dream state that you don't question. And the Maloka shakes, and I start to shrink, and I have this godlike awareness, and I can see each person in the Maloka begin to shrink, almost like to being like a bee size, like really small. And we start to do the helix, like the double helix swirl, really fast. And I'm getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And as I'm questioning, like, whoa, what is this? Where are we going? It was so alien to me. I thought I was having an alien abduction. No joke. I really did. But there was no fear. It was just like, well, I guess I've always known there was a higher intelligence. We're going home. and
Wow.
and we get wrapped up into this helix, and it just pulls us up into a higher reality, I guess, or a spaceship. If like at the time I called it a spaceship. It really felt like I was being pulled up into a spaceship. And that's where the journey takes off. You know, I leave I leave the Maloka, and to my mind, this is all absolutely happening. The way I'm drinking, like right now, I've got a cup of coffee in front of me. I'm sipping on it. It was as real, if not more real, than the cup of coffee and the laptop and you and me talking.
Is it
Um,
you or everybody? Like, because you were saying everybody was is shrinking. So as like you felt like the entire Maloka and you went, well, I mean the participant and you, or at this point, like it was it all of you or just you?
it was all of us.
All of us.
That's why. yeah, it was, and I remember it real time, like, you know how thoughts happen so quick, and there's not like you're checking your thoughts. The narrative that came out was, this Maloka is like a ancient site for aliens to come and suck you up or something, because this is like all this is just happening real time in my mind. Like, I've always known there's a higher intelligence, and I'm about to meet this higher intelligence. And I wasn't wrong. There is a higher intelligence, but it wasn't necessarily aliens. It was just funny how the mind needs to make sense and add a narrative to it.
And what
So,
did you mean? Like, did you mean like higher intelligence as if there is a God, or higher intelligence as if you're talking about aliens slash spirits? What do you mean by that?
yeah, in that moment, I was using the language God. I'm going to meet God. I'm going to meet the
Okay.
beginning of it all. And what turns out is that I along this path, as I get sucked up into this um, higher realm of consciousness, um, I'm 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 met by entities, spirits or angels, or there wasn't like they introduced themselves. Hi, I'm a higher intelligence, or hi, I'm an angel.
Yeah.
It just became very apparent that um, I I was there to develop my consciousness, and that they were in agreement to work on my consciousness as long as I let them. And by consciousness, this is a slippery slope with language, and this is why these experiences can be really uh, challenging to navigate accurately with words, because there's no lexicon that really pins it. So I'll do my best.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's only in hindsight. Like for you at this point, entities, you don't care if they're angels, you don't care if they're aliens. Like you saw them as entities that are here to develop your consciousness or awareness and to do some work, basically. And you don't really question, you're in a dream state, everything makes sense. You're supposed to be there, even like a higher consciousness, God, aliens, you're not even thinking about that. You're just, that's, or yeah, you know what I mean?
yeah, totally.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not questioning it in this. So actually, I do need to say this. As I'm going up, and we'll just call it the spaceship. As I'm going up into the spaceship, there is a moment where I think, what about my family? I'm leaving Earth, right? Because again, this is a very real experience. I'm leaving Earth. I'm not coming back. I'm like, this is what I was on. On some level, there was a knowingness that I had predetermined to have this experience of ayahuasca, to work with the master teacher, that she was one of my life teachers. All this was like instantly known, which brought complete rest within me. There was no angst. But the question, one of love for my brother, my sisters, my parents, and friends. And I started to name them. What about Michael? What about Amanda? What about my parents, Joe and Cindy, Liz, and so on and so forth. And instantly, not in words, it was just imagery that's so rich with meaning. It was all as well. They are well. They are okay. You're okay. Let go. And let in letting go, complete trust. And in that letting go, it was almost like being made lighter and shooting up into, again, higher realms of awareness and consciousness and love. So as we ascend, as I ascend, now my awareness is moving away from the Maloka, moving away from Matthew, that identity, and I get this vantage point where I can see these massive uh, forms of life, I guess, of energy, and they are making me even more compact. It's like they take my awareness and they start to mold it into a brain, into one compact sphere, and I see this other being grab like an anvil and start to smash and like shape my awareness, and it was it was just, I mean, you can't script this stuff. I've never seen anything like it in a movie or read it in a book. So there's no imprint on my psyche that says, oh, yeah, I can trace this back to, I just watched some weird movie that left this impact. Um,
And what were you
and so,
feeling at the time? Like as he's smashing your anvil, are you in a state of bliss? Are you just because I know like when, well, no, tell me actually. Yeah.
yeah, I was in a state of absolute gratitude.
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 There you
Yeah.
go.
it was, so there's a saying by William Blake, who was an English poet. He said, when the doors of perception are cleansed, then you'll see things how they are, infinite. And I was seeing things more clearly than ever. And I saw infinity. I saw the place that we are within infinity, which sounds funny to me as I'm saying it, but that brought so much gratitude, and it made the suffering and the sadness that I had so identified with minuscule. And it's like when you're so zoomed in, you can't see anything else, right? And so this experience is zooming me out, zooming me way out. And suddenly I'm seeing all the support of different soul beings who are always in support of our development. And as there's hitting my awareness with this anvil and shaping my consciousness, the gratitude is pouring out of me, because there's this understanding of, you are in development, have grace for yourself. You don't know enough. Like, what you know is what you know, and that's okay. And in that moment, it's like this sudden flashback of all the narratives of self-hatred, self-defeat.
At every hit, we're kind of
Yeah,
showing you a new thing. Did these entities have form?
they had a shape to them. Yeah, they looked like, they looked, no face. There was no face that I can recall. They looked like massive, um, they had arms and legs and a head, but I could not recall the shape. And there was almost like an avatar glow to them, like the blue avatars from the
Yeah,
movie Avatar.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So there was elements of that luminescence to them, but I couldn't put a face to it. And I wasn't even trying to really.
Yeah.
I was just receiving,
And they were
receiving.
bigger than you, like way bigger,
Massive.
or
I mean, they're
massive?
holding me in the palm of their hands, the
Wow.
thing that I think I am, right? And it was, yeah, I don't pretend to know who and what they are. Like, I won't put a word to them. So it's easy just to say entities or
Yeah, yeah,
higher
no.
beings of some kind.
I'm just trying to pick your brain as what you are seeing, because the experience itself, I'm guessing, is ineffable. But I'm glad that, like, that you're feeling grateful. The other thing I wanted to know is, like, were you able to see your traumas? And yes, at every hit, you could see, like, this is being what, healed or shaped, or like, you
That's
could
right.
see a new awareness about them, but
Yeah.
like in an epic level.
But yeah, they, it wasn't, so the way you and I speak, right? The way we exchange information through words is so slow and tedious. And it's fine. That's part of our experience in this human form. At this level, it was so fluid, instantaneously known. Things are known, like, knowledge is shared instantaneously. So part of the suffering that we experience is not knowing. Well, that's why there's no suffering in these realms. You know it all. It's so, as soon as you can start to ask a question, it's there. So it takes the suffering out of it. As far as my understanding goes, and all this is coming back to me right now. It's really fascinating, by the way. I feel like I'm getting a download as we're having our chat. It's beautiful.
Oh, tell me about it.
Well, that's me saying that what I just shared with you was downloaded, like, just now, as I'm like, oh wow, we know, because the reason there's no suffering in that
Right.
realm of and being is because there's nothing kept from us. Right? There's
And
nothing that we keep from ourselves. Us being in the human form is about specific karmic lessons, right? Our dharma.
right.
So we limit ourselves purposefully to have this experience for where we are in our development. It's
And
all about that. Yeah.
yeah, and as well, like, it's not that you know it all. Is it where you're mostly like you're like a siphon, you're like a filter, and whatever your intention or your thoughts or your awareness falls on, you know it. But it's not like you are omnipotent, It's I don't
That's
know if
right.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautifully said. Yeah, there was no, there was, it was obvious to me that I didn't know it all, that I'm not God with a big G, so to say, right? That the me that is speaking to you and experiencing itself is limited, is not the source. It's like, I'm like a wave in the ocean, to use the pantheistic analogy. We all are waves of the ocean. So going back to this moment, I also recall as they're working on me, and again, I don't remember the linear events. And this might have happened before the anvil and shaping of consciousness or after. But I
Totally
also
fine.
remember, I remember my shape changing. So I changed from like a solid fixed form to this liquid, fluid substance that was just like moving through realms, and like I could go down. I was like cascading, waterfalling through um, Maloka altars, like different altars. And as I went through these altars, I was being upgraded, so to say. I was being touched by true knowledge, not intellectual knowledge, not things you just find in books. The books talk about it, but I, I was being gifted a knowingness of our nature, that we are divine, that we are love, and that we've always been and will always be, and so much more. I mean, this is doing my best to recall
Yeah.
what was coming through.
And I kind of see it like as you have wisdom where you kind of know like like the scripture, you know the text, you know you understand the logic behind it, and then you have knowledge when you experience what you're explaining right now, like you know it.
Yes,
There's
yes.
no way to go around it.
Wisdom is informed through experience, and this experience definitely was like swimming through uh, a river of knowledge. And yeah,
What did the
yeah.
altar look like?
It was
Altars.
also, yeah, they were also very luminescent, like those uh, bright pinks and blues and purples that you again would see characteristic in like the Avatar movies. There was just a lot of what's the shade or like gradient, neon, like neon colors. That's what I was
Cool.
looking for. Yeah, it was really cool. Um, so being as I'm moving through these realms and in states of awareness, I find that I keep saying thank you. I'm not intellectualizing like I need to say thank you to these people or to these beings, and I really need to be thankful. It was just pouring out of me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And as I say thank you, I start to move up through other realms. It's like as soon as it's almost like gratitude was the currency, or if you will, to like move through different areas of existence. um, and then I remember at one point coming out of that place, opening my eyes and being in the Maloka again. And one of the one of the gals next to me was like, "You are so humble. You keep saying thank you." And my mind was like, "Wait, weren't you there too? Didn't you see what I saw?" And that was like, it took me some time to realize I had an experience that not everyone else was sharing, right? I thought for the first few days that we all had the same experience, that we had all gone through the spaceship, that we had made this soul agreement. So it was kind of discombobulating to my mind, right? Trying to like the little ticker tape, trying to make sense of everything.
So does that mean that as you were being anviled and as you were being turned into water, were you able to see your team members kind of going through the same process with different entities, or at one point it was just you and those like a yeah.
No, I was not. Yeah, that's a good question. I was not aware of. I did not see or maybe, and I was not made aware of the other participants
Okay,
going through the same experience. The reason that was stuck in my mind that they were going through a similar experience is because we all shrunk,
right.
we all went up into the spaceship, and then I just thought,
Yeah.
now I'm really focused on my experience. That's why I'm so zoomed in. This is important for me to be here. So
Because I'm really curious about that. I mean, I want to continue with your story. I just and I'm yeah. So I'm just gonna say it because I'm curious about that. Is there a possibility to do work for others under the influence of the medicine? And don't give me any hints if ever you've done that in the future. I just like it's something I'm throwing out there because I have no idea. Yeah.
yeah, that's actually a really good question. And you know what, I'm going to answer your question because it's not something I've experienced, at least
Okay.
not cognizantly.
Okay. Okay.
Um, I would suspect it is, though, because that's what shamans are doing, essentially, right?
But
They drink a small amount of medicine, and they're doing work. They are the bridge between worlds, so they're doing work
but
with our
sometimes
souls.
sometimes I'm wondering if they're just like you said, a bridge where like through their song they were able to send you towards those entities, but then they can't follow you, right? They're a bridge. They're not the one actually doing the anvil or doing the
Oh, I
change,
see.
changing you into water and blah blah blah.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and maybe, I mean, I have no idea. I'm just in your experience right now, it seemed like they were a bridge.
Yeah, yeah. That, that kind of that was not made evident to me, and it wasn't a question that concerned me. But that is an interesting one. I would be. I feel like that's actually a question you could even pose at the next time you find yourself in Peru, which I believe
Right.
you're going to be going
Yes.
again, right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
You, I would pose that question um, to the shaman. That'd be really interesting to hear what their response is.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell me more about like, so now
Sure.
you woke up your eyes and the lady beside you or the woman beside you were saying you were so grateful.
Yeah, she was saying, "You're so humble. You're so humble." And my mind is like, "Wait, what? No, humble." And then like I just remember waking up into that and then going back inside. There was this constant ebb and flow of being in the Maloka, being aware of the Maloka, being aware of that I'm in a ritualistic setting, healing setting, and then going deep back within and traveling far. This is all one ceremony, by the way.
I know.
And
I
it
gotta pause
felt,
you. Sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
Is your body on autopilot? So are you lying down or are you like sitting in the perfect form of like a yogi lotus position? What is your body doing?
No, there was nothing perfect or yogi about me on this ceremony. Well, I guess everything was perfect because I was as I was, and I
Right.
is as I am. But as far as the like lotus position, sitting, having any kind of stoic or peaceful, no, I was actually, I was. There was times where I was crawling around the Maloka because you're having. So though I'm having an internal experience, I'm still connected to the body. And I guess there was times where I like crawled over onto other people's mats, and I
Okay.
wasn't the only one. Um, and I remember putting my hands on the shaman's face. I put my hands on because I was trying to ground myself apparently. And the shaman was, he just kept singing and holding that space. So beautiful. Um, so no,
So
not no. I would
that's
say
important to hear because I mean, just for my sake, I mean, when I just gonna throw a little bit of my experience in there is like when you see other people kind of doing those behaviors, you're wondering what the hell is going on. So were you aware that you were crawling or like at this point, like when you tell me about the anvil part, you were ebb and flow. Sometimes you would come back to the Moloka and you would find yourself trying to ground yourself, or was that totally unaware?
no.
Like,
That was sorry. I just realized I got to give some space between talking. So unaware. I was not, there was not a narrative of I'm reaching out to this person because I need to ground. I realized though that that's what my body was doing. It was because I was in such a fluid space. Um, my mind had no idea of what's real anymore. Is the
right,
Maloka real? Is there something concrete here? Or is the souls who are smashing my consciousness with an anvil, is that more real? And it wasn't even like, again, the way these questions are flowing were so quick. There was no time, there's no self-reflection. It was just like rapid fire. And my awake state of consciousness had no context for what was going on. So there was no grounding into something, right? It was so new. Talk about being a child again, you know?
right. And it's
Um,
only after the fact that you can kind of remember, oh yeah, I did that. Oh shit, or like you could remember what your body did after the experience.
I pieced some things together. Nobody told me, hey, you were crawling around this. My friend who I mentioned earlier in this podcast, Matt Julian, so the yogi, fantastic guy. I interrupted his process and I don't know if my eyes are actually open or closed, but I didn't realize it was him. I was seeing this, I was seeing these like Neolithic kind of Neanderthal beings, and turned out he was one of them. And I reached out and put my hands, because in my vision, or in this experience, I felt like that touching that being was healing, because as I'm going around, I'm being downloaded, I'm being supported in all kinds of love and knowledge. And so I reached out to this, what I thought was an entity, and it turned out to be Matt. And I, poor guy, I put my hands like right on his face, and he didn't react. So the next day he told me, "Hey bro, you totally were all up in my space." And he wasn't rude about it. He was just like, "Hey, don't worry about it. It's all good. It's, part of the journey, lots of love." And,
Right.
I had moments of feeling bad about it, but at the same time, that is what
Oh,
that is where I was, and that's what I am. And so to your point, if any of the listeners are going to have their first time experience in a ceremonial space, you'll witness this kind of behavior sometimes. People having a lack of awareness of their physical body, and being, and it could
all over the
be
place. Yeah.
all over the place, or even unaware of what's coming out of their mouth, as we all witnessed with one of the participants at our Peruvian center. Remember,
Yeah.
we had
Even
one guy who was
even from a posterior, you never know what's going to come out. you know. Yeah.
never trust an ayahuasca fart. That's
That's
right.
right. Okay, I want to take you back to that journey. I sorry for taking you out and making you
Oh,
think of your body. I want to go back in there.
that's all good. I actually suspect there will come a time, whether it's through psychedelics or meditation, where you can journey and still be aware of the body. Um, so going back into the ceremony, um, the anvil
The,
becoming water,
and then the gratefulness from the lady when you
the
were open your eyes.
gratitude,
Yeah.
yeah, the gratitude. Then there were, man, it was the constant guidance throughout the ritualistic ceremony was this Ikiro song. It's like anytime I started to like feel like I was all over the place, as soon as I listened to their song, it was like being called back to centeredness, being called back to more, to looking at the traumas, or looking at the areas of self that are ready to heal and be worked on. And so the shamans were a continual lighthouse on this trip, if you will. And so I remember keying back into their song, being attuned and tuning into it. And their song started to become, not started, their song was like a direct beam of healing, so to say. I felt their music in my veins, in my DNA, like all throughout me, to where like everything that was vibrating, so like a big wave. And I lost sense of Matthew again. I lost sense of a personal experience, and I was the Ikiros. I was every note, and
Was it
that
still
sounds,
gratefulness?
oh,
Like, yeah.
absolutely. It was
Okay.
gratitude. I will say gratitude was often present. Like each of these moments was just reinforced gratitude. Yeah.
And
Gratitude.
between those moments, that's when did you get some like not haha moment, but more like what you just described, like and that like in a moment during that trip, I got the awareness that the Icaros was my DNA, was my, everything. And or was that after the fact?
Well, so through it, I don't know exactly at what point in that ceremony the lessons all come through, but one of the
Yeah.
lessons that came through was that sound is healing. And that's not new information. None of it's new, but for me it was. Sound is healing. And so singing, for the longest time as a kid, I loved to sing. I had vocal nodules as a kid, so I would get teased a little bit for how raspy my voice was, or not singing very beautifully, but I loved to do it. And I was one of those shower singers. And all of that came back to me too on this trip. It was like, your voice, you've really restricted your voice, from singing to not speaking your truth, kind of going along with other people just to please them. And all of this is happening through this like sound bath of Ikiros, literally flowing in and out of me. And
But more than that, like inside your DNA, every
Yes,
single cell, every single everything of your being.
that's right. Every aspect of my being, every molecule, particle, um, is sound, song, love, vibrating. That's the frequency. Um,
Whew.
so, oh yeah, it's using these words to try to convey the lesson diminishes it, not diminishes it, just doesn't do it justice. As you know, it's so
Well,
potent,
it,
so
it
personal.
seems it seems epic to me. So yeah, I understand what you're saying because I've experienced
Yeah,
that once in my life, but it's epic. It's totally
yeah.
epic. Yeah.
Um, so from here, there's been enough space, understanding, and room for healing made, that the journey moves from celebration and a change of self understanding to looking at trauma. And it's like all the while, by the way, all through this journey, I've actually forgotten my intention. Like there was nowhere in this journey where I'm like, wait, what about my sadness? I was so elated to not be cloaked in that sadness that I had forgotten my intention, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, my soul level hadn't forgotten. That was part of the work I was there to do. And ayahuasca hadn't forgotten. So what so this is where the crying starts, Dom. Um, I suddenly am like taken to this chaotic room, through these chaotic rooms. It's like being in a labyrinth of chaos, but it's not scaring me. It's just like a lot of cacophony. And when I look to the left, it's like all these sharp, jagged shapes and kind of discolored, opaque things around me. There wasn't, again, I couldn't recall in this moment the scene, just like colors and like, this is, ooh, I don't like this place that much. And it's not dawning on me that this is the part of my house that I've neglected, right? But that's what we're going through. We start going through this labyrinth, and suffering starts to arise. And I'm not running from it though. I'm just observing it and being supported the whole way by my guides. And I couldn't tell you any faces, or like there was no names. It was just very, I knew that I was, my only job was to look. They'll carry me through it. I just need to witness myself. So I'm watching pain, and I'm watching the self narratives that I've imposed and adopted of, you're not good enough, I'm not, pretty enough, handsome enough, I'm not enough, lack. And suddenly the music stops, because all along there's this music that's carrying me. Like I said, the Ikiros are everything. They're carrying me through like a vessel, and it stops. And we're suddenly on a cold, dark floor. And I feel myself lay back, and I just start to sob and grieve. And the Ikiros pick back up. And I don't know externally if I'm sobbing. I assume I am. You heard many people on this trip in the Icaros that we went, or that we were at, crying and grieving. And it seems like there'd be a pause in ceremony, and everyone's attention would go to that person and help them process their grief. Do you remember that as
No.
well?
Like we did that in Arcana, like where when the Icaros would stop, we would be focusing
Okay.
on one
Yeah.
person.
So
Because
yeah, I guess
I didn't get that. I always so this. Anyways, that's my journey. I'm gonna talk about
yeah,
it.
sorry. So
But
yeah, okay. Yes. So I found, anyway, so I have to remember, I was trying not to overlap too much with Arcana and my Enigmaicaya. So
we'll get to Arcana, and I'm gonna tell my story at the same time as you when we get there. It's anticipation. But
cool.
in this journey right now, where you're at, the Icaros would stop to go help out people.
Yeah. So the Ikiros, in my experience, again, I'm not in the Maloka of what I'm experiencing. I'm in another realm, another world, different state of being. And but I'm seeing before me a cold dark floor, and I'm lying on it, and I just kind of I just surrender. I give way to what has been welling up inside me, which is grief and sadness. And I just grieve. I give myself permission to finally cry, to let all the emotions of not being good enough, of being weak, of fearing, people thinking the worst of me, of actually being the worst, so on and so forth. It just comes pouring out of me.
Uh,
And
And
as I cry,
Yeah, I'll continue. Sorry.
As I cry, I'm I can hear myself and my support saying, "It's okay. You're loved. I love you. It's okay, and it's okay to cry. It's okay to feel. There's nothing wrong with that. That's completely human, and it's a part of your makeup.
A-
To restrict, to hold this back from yourself causes suffering." And it was getting a lesson while getting the healing at the same time.
And the type of crying, is it like because I want to talk about that because in my life, but the type of crying, is it like the walls are open and you're crying? And I know, I that's what I want to know. Does it feel like good, or is it like really like a trauma is processed? Like, the processing of trauma, crying can feel very painful, uh, very kind of, not that you're, maybe I want to know like what type of crying, like how did you feel? I don't know if you're understanding my question, because
Yeah,
there's many types of crying, right? There's the crying of like, finally, or there's this crying of like, oh my God, look at this like crap that's processing through me, or like, you know what I mean?
well, let me see if I know what you mean. I think I'm following you. So I'll do my best and just explain what I was experiencing in that moment. And it was finally me not thinking about crying or thinking about how I looked or how I would be perceived. It was me surrendering, and it was like sure, it felt good, but it wasn't like when I laughed, that felt great, right? Ecstasy. This
Yes.
wasn't ecstasy. It was healing. It was catharsis, but it was truly letting go. And I'll give you an example by sharing the rest of this experience, this journey. This part of the journey was as I let the tears come, as I let the grief be felt and come through. It was giving myself permission to let go of that guarding and restrictive parts. And I looked to my left, and I'm not kidding. There was a dead me laying next to me. It's like,
What?
yeah, this is what you've been carrying around, and now you're ready to let it go. And all that was like instantaneous. I knew, and I grieved that me, because that me had served me to a certain point, right? That me had helped me create my business. That me had helped me navigate childhood traumas. That me had helped me survive the public school and fights and all kinds of things. That me needed to be honored, and that was that whole ritual. This whole ritual of going to Peru and asking for healing and letting go was also an honoring of the past self. So it wasn't just, hey, I don't want this anymore, I don't love you. It's, hey, thank you for your service. Thank me for all that I've weathered, and thank you for making me me. I can now let you go. It's now time for me to let you go. Thank you. And I remember, because I wasn't strong enough to just walk out of this energy space. My guides picking me up and me kind of just looking over my shoulder. And that was the gratitude all at once. Thank you so much. And I just felt absolutely unburdened. Um, and the rest of that journey um, was celebration from there, because that was what we'd really come to look at. And that was I got what I had come for on that I got what I had come for by the second ceremony, and there was two ceremonies to go. Um, and it reminds me of I think Terrence McKenna, who says, or maybe it's Alan Watts, when you get the message, hang up the phone. Have you heard
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, of course.
Well, I didn't want to hang up the phone. I was enjoying the conversation.
Yeah.
So,
And
um,
like, if you wouldn't have had your brothers and sisters to help you move out of that space, you could have, like, you wanted to stay there and mourn your physical body, or like, that's kind of cool. Uh, like, would you have stayed there? Like, if ever they wouldn't have been there, would that have been something so difficult that you wouldn't have been able to get out without that help?
hmm. I didn't that question didn't cross my mind.
Okay.
I just but it is a good question, an interesting one. what I note though is that I haven't thought of until we're having this talk is I was carried the whole way, right?
Yeah.
As I'm going through this, there was nothing I did on my, there was, what I did was look, as I guess is what I'm trying to say. I
Right.
was carried to this point and I was supported by all the people in the Maloka who are doing their work. And I was supported by, I would say, other beings of higher, more developed awareness. And excuse me.
That's
And
okay.
they carried me to that point, and they carried me. It's like it felt like it was a simultaneous decision of me. I was done. I had grieved for what needed to be grieved in that moment, and they knew it was time to move on to the next area of self, I guess, the next part of the journey. And I felt no attachment to it. In fact, I'd say I was relieved to know that that was the sadness. That's what I was carrying around. I was still carrying around a perception of self, a distorted perception of self, that was no longer serving me. And that needed, in order for me to step into my next part of life, I had to let myself go or die, so to say.
And also the gratefulness and the awareness now that crying openly, I call it crying openly without shame, had now, like, that was a new you when you let that go.
Yeah, that's right. That's
And
true.
and you had that awareness, like you, because, and that's what I'm wondering. It's like almost letting your biology finally be itself, when feeling sad, like to go through the grossness of snot and whatever, crying traumas was in the past. Now, like, tell me about that.
Yeah, so at the time, again, mid journey, none of that was being processed, or it might have been being processed, but it wasn't in my awareness.
Right.
That oh, now I can cry whenever I want. It was really the lesson for me was I am the one who gives myself permission, right? I made an agreement at an early age that said, hey, it's not okay to cry. You have to be strong, don't be weak. And that carried over. And it was hurting me in my relationships because it kept me from letting people get close to me. It kept me guarded in some regard, guarded in some regard.
Yeah.
Um, and so that was one of the key lessons. How that's continued to show up now, that shift in me over the years is I've cried in front of family, where I would not have. My role within my family, I felt, was to be to learn how to be a provider, like my dad was for me as a kid, and my mom, and to be strong for my brothers and sisters. That was the reinforced role within my family, and that's the role I took within my relationships romantically as well. So
That's amazing.
being
And
yeah
yeah, continue, sorry.
so so accessing a part of myself that I had been denying was very healing, and it's continued to be. I mean, it doesn't mean that I always feel comfortable crying now, but I don't beat myself up or tell myself I'm weak for crying, um, and that's a big improvement for me.
That's an incredible improvement. And like, and it's making me think, like, without that experience, is there any way that anybody can shed that part of themselves that is dead or broken or like that? That is crazy. You know what I mean? I I know I don't know if nobody knows the answer. It's just that's what's going through my mind on, how can you let that such a big part of yourself go without help? Like, it's blowing my mind.
Yeah, I suspect that you're never doing it alone. Whether one uses the medicine of ayahuasca, or whether one uses not uses but participates with ayahuasca, or participates in um, like
Counseling, whatever.
therapy,
Yeah.
or or meditation and therapy, or somatic body work. And these are all different modalities and tools that we have access to, um, and that help us get to know ourselves and one another more authentically. And so I don't think ayahuasca is the the only game in town, so to say, but it's the one that resonated with me, right? That, and it continues to resonate with me. This is my dharma. So
Yeah. And
Um,
as I asked that question, your trip just came back in my awareness of, you know, the like what you went through. It really starts with the body. If you like the fact that those entity had to reform you. I mean, working out to, like you say, breath work, just the awareness of turning to your body and saying, let me do just a little step here and little step here to make this body work a little bit better is like almost like a first step. And then, like the idea that the body and your mental health are two different things is completely bunkers. Like they both go hand in hand in so many ways. So even if you take a little step here towards your body, it will affect your mental health here and there, I'm guessing. But that's what your journey is telling me anyways.
Yeah, and I mean we live in a culture that is starting to catch up to what the science has shown too, which is mind body, and it's what religions and spirituality have known for a long, long time. These are interwoven, right? They're a feedback loop. You change the mind, you change the body. If you change the body, you change the mind. So whichever way you want to come at it, you know, it will have an impact whether you start with mind or you start with body. But
What you said is
so
so true. Oh, sorry, continue. Yeah.
oh no, yeah, that was the crux of it.
Because the one that gets me lately, which is kind of blowing my mind, is as I'm working on spirituality, I am seeing physical changing. Like my shoulders used to be hunched forward, and without any kind of working out or me, like I'm standing straighter, I'm looking better, I'm looking in the mirror and I can see myself just looking better. I'm like, what's going on from today to yesterday? And then I think back like, oh yeah, you did a little bit of work when it comes to your mental health, and all of a sudden the person that's facing me in front of that mirror is actually looking better, and there's less lines on my face. My hair seems browner and less gray.
My
It's
hair too, Dom. My hair looks way better since you've last seen me.
yeah. You're bald. Yeah, I like that.
That's right. You
Oh
should,
man.
my barber does good work.
I'll have to put a picture on the podcast to show people that joke. Oh
Yeah.
man.
So I need to just take a quick break here and use
Well,
the restroom.
I think
Oh, go ahead.
that I really think that we should stop it here because that was
Yeah.
such a beautiful journey. But I mean, this is not over. I hope you're willing to come back, if you don't mind, to
Yeah. I
continue
mean,
this journey.
I love talking about myself, you know, so
And
no,
like we were, yeah, continue about that. Yeah.
no, I enjoy revisiting uh, these these moments, and also it opens the door to hear other points of view, and to hear your experience. And yeah, so I feel very privileged and would love to come back and continue. And the truth is, we're not even done with my first ceremony. There's more, believe it or not. Like I
No
said, this was
way.
the oh yeah, this was the most profound one, and it was the longest lasting one. Like when I came back out of it, I thought I had been gone for years. Actually, no, that's not true. Lifetimes. It felt like I had lived lifetimes. It was really
But that is that
unlike
summer.
anything else.
Is that ceremony done though? The second ceremony, is it like you
No,
came back?
there's more.
Seriously? Yo, I'm gonna
Yeah.
pause this. I want to hear more. All right. All right, Matt, you're back?
Nice.
All right.
So, so yeah, at this point, my guides are moving me away from the part of myself that is being let go of, the part that has served me for 3 decades, uh,
And
and
that part
just
of
immense
you,
gratitude.
is he like dead, disgusting, decaying, or can you see, like, tell me, what did you see?
Yeah, that's. I mean, all of those things that you just said. It was really it, I looked at him, or looked at my shed layer of self, and it looked like this rotting skin corpus, and it sounds terrible, but that's what it was. It was like this skin that had been held onto for way too long is what comes to mind. um,
And that's on the floor, the cold floor that allowed you to start crying. Like I was laying on
yeah,
that dark, I guess, black floor. I'm not sure.
yeah, and actually, as wow, I'm being brought right back to that experience. I remember laying there as I'm crying, and as the tears are releasing, as the grief is flooding out and given permission to be processed by me, I feel hands of support all around me. And I don't know if it was the facilitators that were there, like, offering me support on the outside, or if that was my guides, or both. We're multidimensional beings. So it could have been that the facilitators who were there were also operating on the soul level with me. But I felt loving hands helping me grieve that part of myself, and just supporting me as I let that part of myself go. And then as I did, truly letting it go, it's just like I said, we floated on to the next part of the journey. Um, and
So you,
that's where, again, I got the crux of what I had come looking for, to resolve the deep sadness that I carried around and that colored my experience of the world.
so did you stop crying at this point, or and the gratitude came back? What were you feeling when you were being pulled away? Like the transition was from sadness to still sadness, or sadness to gratefulness, love?
Yeah, it was all those emotions present at once. And
Right.
I think that's what was also quite fascinating. It wasn't just like, I'm sad now and there's no room for anything else. It's, I'm sad. It's okay that I'm sad, because again, my mode of operation, my psychology at the time was, it's not okay to feel sad and show that sadness. It's okay to be stoic. That's a better thing, and it's safe. And like all these different um, guarded and constricted parts of self were suddenly freed, released up, and I could truly just let myself be as I am, and that's that self acceptance. So, um,
And that dead
as
thing that you left behind, you really left it behind? Like it's not something that you're still carrying and kind of struggling through sometimes when you're feeling depressed or whatever. Like it's actually you, it's dead, it's out, it's gone.
I would say, that degree of suffering has been left behind. That
Nice.
degree of jaundiced eyes have been traded in for different eyes, so to say. In fact, one of my friends who I sent the podcast from yesterday to listen to it, and he really enjoyed it, by the way. And he asked me a similar question about anxiety and depression. He's like, "Oh, post ayahuasca, do you like, are you free of anxiety and depression, or is this something you still have to cope with?" And I said, no, I still cope with anxiety and depression, but my framing of it, my deeper understanding of why these states arise, has changed my relationship with self into these ways of being. So I still get anxious, and that anxiety is not always just mine. We come from families that generational patterning traumas um, have shaped our personalities and carry with them
And it's
anxiety.
also the paradox of the more open you are, the more you are susceptible to feel others' pain, because now you have the capacity to either become like your path, your purpose. Who knows what that is? But it always ends up, well, not always, but often, as you go through your this type of journey, you get to heal others through your openness. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And that resonates. In fact, it also highlights where I still suffer. So I'll start with why I think that's beautiful. By remaining open, you acknowledge that life carries with it suffering, and you see and acknowledge the suffering that others are experiencing, which validates them. Um, and really, to me, that's the role of a healer. Is it's not that you've transcended all that human suffering, it's that you've grown enough to sit with it, and not, it's not that you're fully okay with it yet. I mean, I'm not, anyways. This is why I still suffer. But you you can breathe with it. You're more battle tested. You can sit with the other person and be the space with them through it. That doesn't mean you take away their suffering. Just like no one can take our suffering away, we have to resolve and let that go in some way. So
Yeah.
um,
I have a friend that talks about it as if like the more you go towards in your journey in healing, it's the more you're carrying that suffering with honor. And while you're carrying that suffering, everybody can kind of pass through that because it's such a, because it's heavy, it's big as a mountain, but it's as light as a feather. It's depending on your day, you know, if you're fully rested and everything. But when you are carrying it fully and it's as light as a feather, it's kind of, it becomes a filter where as soon as you interact with somebody else, they have no choice but like they can, I don't know how to explain it, but it's more like their suffering gets to attach to your suffering, and then through that there's healing because you get to carry other people's suffering at the same time and kind of like almost process it to filter it. I don't know. I'm just
Yeah.
vibing. Yeah,
No, I'm saying, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. What resonates for me and connects from what you just said is, again, we are having an individual experience. We don't exist on an island, so we do share each other's suffering, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. Right? That's
yeah,
which only exasperates our suffering if we're trying to avoid it. Um, so being like we're part of a super organism, and when one part of the organism, when the pinky is in pain, just because the toe's not in pain doesn't mean the whole organism doesn't feel it, you know,
yeah.
to so to say. um,
But it's also
and
the, oh, sorry, it's also the awareness that suffering, when it is light as a feather, it's actually a bliss. And that blew my mind when I realized that. I don't know if you've experienced that before.
I've not heard it said that way, so
Okay. I,
please
that,
expand on it.
well, no, no. When we get there, when we get to my journey in our arcana, I really want to focus on that second ceremony still because I'm so curious and
Sure.
yeah, yeah,
Okay, so switching, so it's not switching, as transitioning from the letting go the parts of self that we're ready to be let go of. It felt like a movie scene, like transitioning to a new scene, and I don't know how I got there or all the in between, but suddenly I was back on the spaceship, so to say, and this time there were actual physical formed aliens in front of me. Like the stereotypical uh, big alien heads, and there was these, and I'm just like a fly on the wall of consciousness observing, but there was like three aliens sitting in the triangle, and they were meditating, like they were all in the lotus position, in absolute just complete stillness, and they were communicating with me, but again, it wasn't through words, and it was all love. It was all love. um, and actually what came through kind of was have patience with self, have patience with your development and the development of those around you. Patience, patience, patience. um, and like now looking back, I'm like, that's so mind-blowing. So many different archetypes came up in this journey, and I'm just not surprised, and I am surprised that, you know, aliens were a constant theme, from the spaceships bringing us out of the Maloka to meditating aliens communicating telepathically through symbols and things like this.
there's
Um,
that. Do you have a passion for aliens?
no, not really.
Okay. And
No, I mean, like, so that part is kind of surprising.
all right. And those aliens, did they have clothing? Were they naked? Were they green? Were they like, I started to harp on the actual visualization. It's just I'm so passionate about that.
Yeah. In fact, now that you, with your question, there's more that's coming back about what was included in that experience. I don't recall them having clothing. I wasn't so fixated on
Right.
those details, but I don't recall them wearing any clothing. And I do recall almost like a Native American, um, like great spirit kind of energy in the room. And part of this hero's journey, so to say, or full blown mystical experience, going from the dark night of the soul to being reborn, was an element of play within this part of the journey. And I was at this point, I must have been sitting in like a lotus position or meditative position, um, probably emulating the aliens that I was looking at before me. But the message they were also sending to me was don't be so hard on yourself, like love yourself more, have grace for yourself. And then it's like this energy took my arms and I started like doing the wave, and I was standing up dancing like a rain dance on my mat. And I could simultaneously, I was existing on this plane with these aliens, not plane like plane flying, but like an energetic plane of existence
Yeah.
with these aliens that were, teaching me. And then simultaneously, I was existing in the Maloka in the physical form. That was the first time where I felt I was two places at once. And that dancing, giving myself permission to be guided in dance, was was very lighthearted. Like, to use the term you said, light like a feather. It was very much like I had been, that burden had been lifted off of me. And so play was a theme of that part of the journey.
And
Play.
yeah, and after the first trip, when uh, the puking, it sounded like you had an awareness of like, oh man, the people beside me must have had a horrible experience because you were puking for so long and the noise you must have been making. In the second ceremony, when you came in with a lighthearted, when you were doing the dancing, I'm guessing again, like because of all of the healing and the surrender of allowing your body, you were dancing like nobody was watching.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
amazing. Oh, amazing. Oh, that's beautiful.
Because I didn't realize anyone was watching.
Okay. So
I
you didn't have that awareness. That's my question.
didn't have
Okay.
I didn't have the awareness. I didn't have the concern.
Right.
It's like it doesn't matter, and we both know on some level it doesn't matter. Yes, we want to respect everybody's process. You don't want to disrupt the healing process of another person. But the intent there was no malice. It was, my lesson was dance, be playful. And in that instance, I was on my mat. I know I could see myself. I stayed on my mat. I wasn't dancing around the Maloka or like in someone else's space. Um,
Right.
and to my knowledge, I wasn't singing either. I was just having I was playing out the experience on a higher plane, but playing it out on this plane,
And
if
there
that
was healing that
makes
was
sense.
happening at the same time because those aliens that were in triangle meditating, they were doing work on you, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yes, they were doing work on
Wow.
me. And it was a simple message: play. Don't take life or yourself too serious, because I had a tendency, being so fixated in my role, to take life as this serious thing that like I have to be vigilant about everything I'm doing, if I'm going to be successful, if I'm going to be taken serious, and so on and so forth. And this
Especially
was like
as a business owner. I mean, there's so much pressure to succeed, or else literally you're going to lose your house.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that is part of the narrative. I mean, full disclosure, I didn't have a house, but I was renting,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it was still. But the heart of it is, I want to be successful in order to have these things, to be secure, and I have to do it because no one else will for me. So, playfulness, being connected to the inner child, those were the themes that came out of that part of the journey. And the music from there on, I mean, there was a point either before or after that alien transition where the shaman entered my journey, uh, and like I don't know what the right terminology. 4D? We're 4D, right? 4D, 3D?
No, I think we're in 4D because of time. So yeah. So you've
Yeah,
got the
4D.
3D. Yeah,
So in yeah, I don't know what dimension you'd say, but like they were almost like like laser pointers that you
yeah,
can use. You do like squiggly on the wall and the cat chases it.
yeah.
There was like multicolor laser pointer holographic imaging of this shaman in front of me, and he was like dissolving and taking form again and again in front of me, and just showing me like you can make and unmake yourself as many times as you want. Like you have agency. If you want to make yourself this, you make yourself that. If you don't, you can unwind it. And I mean, this is a lesson I'm still learning to not. Yes, there's benefit to being fixed and cultivation and discipline towards any goal, but that's all that's all based on an agreement that you make around something you want or something you want to have an experience in. And then if you don't want to have that experience anymore, you can unravel that in some way and remake yourself. That may not have been the full lesson, but that's kind of the lesson I take from it now, looking back. Um,
And that
but that was,
lesson, it was more of a teaching compared to like when you were liquid, it was like a knowing. This one was really cool. Like you could see that he was not like inside of your cells, and you could see the message he was sending through, but not comparable to, you know what I mean?
well, it was so he's singing all the while he's singing the Ikiros. It was almost like he was in two places at once. He and she. They are both. There's more than one. They were obviously in the Maloka singing the Ikiros, and then they were in. I felt like they were interwoven in this plane with me, and just like constant dynamic movement, unraveling, and then coming back into some form. And they were, and I was also taking on the same shape of them. It's like they were teaching me how to do this, right? As they're singing, they're like, yeah, you do this note at this pitch, and you can have this experience in the realm of the formless, so to say. So it was, so at
Well,
different points of this journey, I would say the lessons got more and more advanced at times.
right,
For
right.
my, you know,
Oh, that's so
um,
cool. Continue. Woo, man, I'm going on a journey. It's crazy. I feel like I'm there.
that's fantastic, man. Well, and yeah, so from, I guess from there, I also had some past life regressions, what people might identify as a past life regression. Like there was a moment where I was in Egypt in like the sand dunes, and I had like a big headdress on. I was no pharaoh or anything. I was a worker. So, but I just remember like laboring under the hot sun, not feeling any of the suffering, but just kind of witnessing this life. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then in a in the earlier point of the journey, I was also in a life where I was like in a tribe, and we were like a cave tribe, and we were stoking a fire, and I was chanting. Like I was the role that I had within that tribe. I don't know if I was a medicine man or what, but I was singing a chant like to keep the darkness at bay, so to say, and like to be like a guarding the light and and fighting off the darkness. And it was, so it's interesting. It's also why I think when I came back to my sensory experience that I thought I had lived lifetimes, because in my journey I had been to Egypt, and then I had been like in a cave with a tribe that was like not primordial, but what would you call that? Like Neolithic times.
Yeah. Now,
So
when you went back and do those past life things, that's I'm curious. Like, did you heal some traumas? Did you learn? Was there teachings from those visions, or was it just and like, yeah, I want to know about that.
it was more feeling like it was almost like, so you know how the brain gets you have like the reptilian brain with its reflexes.
Right.
uh, it felt more primary. Being in like the cave with this tribe or this group of people, it felt like there was fire and fear, and then um, anger, and then love, and like it was more feeling based. And it wasn't, there probably were lessons there, but not in the way that my conscious mind could put words to it. It was just more of an experience, I guess. Primary feelings.
Sometimes I
And the
wonder
Egyptian
if,
one,
oh no, sorry, continue.
oh no, I'm saying the Egyptian one, I don't recall any lesson with it. It was just more like I was passing through a lifetime. I'm like, oh, look, I was an Egyptian, or maybe I wasn't an Egyptian. Maybe it was just like I have access to this timeline because there is no time in that place. It's just like you have access to it all. So
And because you didn't really like it came by surprise, obviously, it's not like, oh, I'm gonna do some past life regression. Sometimes I
right.
wonder if it's like, you know, the like you said, the reptilian brain, I like how you went there into the idea that in this life, when mother is doing healing with the medicine, if when she's healing your brain, you get to touch like those visions allowed mother or allowed something to do work within you and to often I notice that because it's not the first time that I hear people going through this experience and everybody always comes out like, oh, that was cool, or not necessarily teaching, but as I've been meditating on that idea, is how can I explain it? It's like almost like a physical thing. Like these past lives are actually getting healing from the experience that you just had before, like it be your gratefulness or the idea of letting go or the idea. It's almost like past karma. And I know people have a hard time doing that connection, but do you remember before going into those past lives? I know it's hard to think of like the flow of things like, oh, this happened before or whatever, but the entirety of it, let's say time doesn't exist, like the entire trip made it possible for those past lives to be acknowledged or processed, through, I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah. I so again at this point I wasn't. I was aware of the language of karma and aware of reincarnation, but I had no experience that would lead me to believe in it. However, this experience most definitely changed my outlook on uh, the nature of our being, and that we are souls that have always been and will always be, and that the world of form is one way that we experience ourselves and learn and grow. So, as far as the your question about
Well, I think you just answered it. That in itself is such a healing. To have this confidence that your awareness will continue after death, I'm struggling with that right now. I mean, that is huge.
yeah, I guess that was, you know what you saying, that was a major lesson. The fear of death, um, overarchingly, isn't one that weighs on me anymore. Don't get me wrong. If someone put a gun to my head, I'd have fear. I'm still experiencing myself as Matthew. There's a personality that I'm operating from, and I still don't want to die.
Of course.
Um,
Yeah, the ego doesn't want it. The ego will always try to protect itself no matter what.
right,
And you as the observer, you can't change that. I mean, it's just the way it
right.
is. Yeah.
But there's a knowingness ever since this specific ceremony that has been so deeply instilled in me. It doesn't require belief.
Yeah.
I've had an experience. So, and
I
that's
got
what I
my
would say to
answer.
any,
Yep.
yeah, and that's what I would say to anybody. It's like the difference between religion and an ayahuasca ceremony is experience. You do religion, you read, you get all the stories, and there's beautiful lessons, and there's a lot of important things there, but it's not. It's a very limited experience. You go to church, you listen to some guy talking, versus you feel the earth in your body. You feel the connection to this beautiful environment of which you are part. You touch firsthand the web of life. And it's such a rich experience that belief isn't needed. Faith is, and those are two different things. Um, faith faith requires that you have trust in something greater than yourself, but not just blindly like you're jumping off a cliff, right? From what I understand, what I experience, there is some inkling, some level of intelligence pulling at you that says, "Hey, let go," and
Yeah.
then that's the whether you're inching up to that letting go or you run head first, whatever. That's your pace, but belief is like this. I feel like something hitting you over the head again and again, like trying to get you to adopt a way of thinking or an ideology, whereas experience informs faith. And so I have a faith now and an experience, um,
And
in
when you,
consciousness being fundamental.
yeah. And when you experience those past life, uh, is it that your memory, remembers only that part where you were in the cave or that part where you were sweating outside? But in your trip, it felt like you lived that entire life? Or was it just a glimpse of, oh, look at that, or look at that?
It was mostly a glimpse. I mean, the one where I was with the tribe in a cave. That one seemed to last long. In fact, that one actually happened. Now that I remember, early on in that second ceremony, it was like one of the transitionings. Actually, yeah, it definitely happened earlier on, but it was it was just a glimpse. I mean, at the time, maybe it felt like it went on longer than it did. but my memory bank of it is that it was me like in front of a fire. We were singing or chanting, and to my right was darkness, and to my left was the fire and the light, and I was like the mediator between the two. So,
It's almost like
um,
you waking up in the morning. It's like you don't have to live your entire life to know like your memory is almost like you wake up and it's like, yeah, yeah, of course, I've that's my life. That's I've lived this caveman body, and then you wake up again in another one. But I like that you almost have like an understanding that that imagery or that past life has actually helped you into your journey before maybe crying or this and that. That's so cool.
yeah, man. And I will say too, this one ceremony alone has been an ongoing download of unpacking, right? Because one of the key things about these kind of journeys and doing this work is I feel like there's three stages. There's the preparatory stage of cleaning out your body, getting your nutrition right, and maybe watching and reading some literature around shamanistic rituals and other people's experiences. And then there's you show up, you do the ceremony, you go on the journey, and then there's the longest piece, and that's the integration piece, and that's the piece that you and I are now in, right?
Oh yeah.
And like that one profound ceremony, if I never had another ayahuasca experience, that'd be okay. I mean, I can't help but want to keep, I don't want to hang the phone up. I want to see more. I want to re-experience that. um, but there's so much there that can be unpacked aside from aside from being at an ayahuasca ceremony. So just through my everyday life, through mindfulness, through breath work, through conversations with friends, community, transparency, there's plenty of work to do and integrate after the ceremony. And that's the piece that I'm constantly learning and realizing now. And it gets overlooked, I think, a
Of
lot of
course.
times. But
But also like it's not like you're hanging up the phone. I feel is more appropriate for like when you like faith, after you've really integrated faith, you hang up the phone, like you trust. And yeah, you might have do some work on trust again for different things, but like this hanging up the phone on experiencing life, I mean, why not experiencing the mushroom ayahuasca more? Like who knows what's going to come by. Like I'm going to hang up the phone when I die, or even then. you know if
yeah,
I
yeah,
choose to. It depends what religion, like if you choose to have a reincarnation or just like you say, hang up the phone and merge with God, or I have no idea what's going to happen. I'm just throwing things out
yeah.
there.
And I don't either. I don't know what's going to happen. I just know that death doesn't have the sting that it used to for me. I don't fear it. Um, I somewhat welcome it. And this tends to be the theme amongst cultures that have a strong focus on spirituality. I mean, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Native Americans, there's the indigenous cultures have a healthy
But
balance and respect for the forces of death and life, right?
yeah, I know it
So,
seems like there's something in Christianity that just so scary. Like I talked to my parents that have been Christian all their life, and they still have that hiccup, even though they fully believe. There's still something that stings about it. Like there's a sadness about it that
yeah.
they can't get over. Yeah. Anyways, neither here nor there, I guess. Yeah.
All good. Well, it does actually, that's still worth noting
Of
when you're
course.
talking about people that are close to you and their relationship with death, even with the belief, right? The belief in faith in a heaven and a God who will take them there. There's this apprehension and fear towards death. That's
Yeah.
pretty common.
I have to say that that comment as well that I just said, it's neither here or there. That's my insecurities coming up about that still. Like I'm healing. I'm going through it. This is a
Yeah, man.
process for me for sure.
Yeah, me too. We're all in the same boat, same pace. Well, the thing I like to say is same pace, the left foot can't outrun the right foot.
That's right.
So,
So tell me more about
um,
that journey. So now you've experiencing some glimpse of being a pharaoh working outside. Tell me
oh, so
more.
no, it wasn't a fair, like, this is when I want to say, like, I didn't have some vision of being a king or pharaoh. I was just some guy walking through the desert with
Right.
a headdress on. So I don't know. I don't know what my role was or anything. I just visited the Egyptian times, and I was aware that that was the case. Um, it was almost like in fact, looking back, it almost seemed like it was a scene of me wandering. I'm out there walking through the desert. So I wonder if this has been a karmic theme in my life, that I have a seeking nature. Seeking out knowledge, seeking out experiences. That's true. That's been the case for sure in this lifetime. Um, just a side note, and this journey is almost wrapped up, by the way, ceremony wise.
Take your time.
But
Take your time.
in this lifetime, I've on my own dime been through Southeast Asia, been through South America, been through Europe. Had all those are. I'm very fortunate to have those opportunities. I've been to Buddhist temples, um, synagogues, so on and so forth, and it's mosques in Turkey. It's been a beautiful experience. Of seeking, of having these experiences. Um, this might be the first life where I've stepped into my knowing a little more, rooted in this spirit. I don't know. That's speculation, right? I don't know how many lives I've lived, um, how
I
many
tr-
lives we've lived, but
Intuition
there's
is strong,
definitely,
though. I feel like what you're saying is it resonates. So yeah, don't doubt for sure. Continue. Yeah.
yeah. So there's something true to my nature as seeker, and I tend to link up and feel like I vibrate and connect well with people who are also seeking, right?
Hmm.
Or and maybe it's because seeking is symbolic of growth, like to me in some way. If you're looking, that means you acknowledge that you don't have it all. You don't have it all figured out. Um, doesn't mean you have to always look outside yourself. You can look within, but there's just something true about seeking that resonates with me, and it's in my nature for now. So, um,
But I like what you
yeah,
just said, though. Like, there is a paradox there that, like, in your journey, at this point in your journey, anyways, you realize like the inside, looking at yourself, going inward is something that you haven't done, right? And now you're doing it in that second ceremony. So, and you're releasing that dead thing, and you're just. But there's also to speak on that comment though, on as I continued my journey, I'm also realizing now more and more that as I'm looking inside, I'm noticing that the outside is becoming more and more me. So there's that transformation of when you're really aware of the inside, the outside is transforming with it, and it gives you a glimpse of like, oh man, this outside is more me than, you know what I mean? Like both of them are very equal. They have a 50-50 part to play in it. It's just I find I used to get so confused on, like, even you as you're speaking, like, oh, it's Matt speaking, but man, I'm experiencing what you're experiencing in your journey of traveling the world. I was a flight attendant for 2 years and a half. So I like it. You are speaking my language so much that I can't help to say, like, that's just another version of me. And the more that I surrender that you are me and this wall is me, it makes sense. It resonates.
that's so beautiful. I forgot that you were a flight attendant. I remember you mentioning that to me. That's
Yeah.
awesome, man. See, there's that seeker. There's that world traveling bug.
Oh, I didn't really have a choice to be a flight attendant. It kind of just happened. Yeah, I could, yeah, I could share that story. But when I became a flight attendant, I didn't even want to go to apply. It was in Toronto, and I lived in Ottawa. My sister wanted me to go with her because the lineup before you get to the interview is long, and she didn't want to be alone and blah blah blah. And when I went with her, she says, "Bring your resume." But I didn't want to be a flight attendant. I just wanted to spend time with my sister. Anyways, it ended up that I got the job. Like I got the first interview and she didn't. And then I had to go back to Toronto by myself. Then I got the third interview and then I had to go back again to Toronto. And my life was turning uh, upside down. Like I didn't want to be a flight attendant. I was happy where I was. And it kind of life took me on a journey for 2 years and a half. And as I was experiencing the world, I was in full blown depression. So it was quite a unique experience. Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's awesome that it's not even even now, like I didn't have a choice, but there sounds like there's benefit to it.
a hundred
It
percent.
obviously took you to where you are now. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And when I'm with other people, I'm always smiling. So it was kind of a depression of what you were talking about. When you rest your head in the pillow at the end of the day, how do you feel? And that's, I always wanted to be out. I always wanted to, and when I was home, oh my God, the worst feelings.
being out was
It,
a an opportunity to be away from that part of yourself for a little bit.
well, it's more of uh, my karmic value. It's more of who I am. When I'm with other people, I cannot help but to be happy and to want to know other people's stories and to listen and to encourage, to push people to grow and to smile. Like I don't know, I can't help myself. Like that's why these podcasts are so amusing. They're so amazing to me because it's something that I'm born with. I love hearing other people's story. I love being with other people. When I'm at work, it doesn't matter if the work is shitty. As long as there's somebody beside me, I'm smiling. Period. That the end. And that's it. It's just the way it is. I'm happy when I'm surrounded by anybody, even people I don't like. Somehow, yeah, somehow, somewhere, I'm smiling and I interact with them because that's just who I am. And not that I surrender, but I accept everybody, anybody. I've always been non-judge. Like I don't know why, and yet I do judge people. Like as I grew up as a teenager, like I judge how you look and everything. But as soon as you make contact with me, judgment goes away. But
Yeah.
if you're not a part of me and I see you from afar, I would judge. Like that's, things that I've healed after ayahuasca, and I've realized like, oh, I was just judging myself. But as soon as I interact with somebody, it's like almost when you're driving in a car and you're like, fuck you, you just cut me off. And if we would get out of that car and I would start talking to you, I would feel shame right away and I would want to be your friend and somehow I would be smiling and I'd be like, let's go have a beer. Like, I don't know. It's just me. Yeah, I don't know.
But it's wonderful to hear that you're aware of yourself and aware of how you experience yourself in certain situations. And yeah, you've said essentially so hum on many occasions in this conversation. You're like, I am that. I see that, like the separation kind of disappears. um,
That's one of the knowing that I was fortunate to have this year through many different experience with the mushrooms or whatever. But yeah, that's a knowing that
yeah.
I'm so happy to have. Yeah.
Well, you've been doing the work, my friend. So
Oh man, you're doing the work with me right now. Tell you the
yeah,
truth. So much
you and me
healing is
both.
coming out of this. So is there
Well,
more from that second ceremony?
um, again, no, that's the bulk of it. I will say, I remember the end of the ceremony. I couldn't tell you how it exactly ended because the chronology of things was so discombobulated. When you're going from beings that are smashing you with anvils to being liquid to being like laser pointers with shamans to aliens in a spaceship meditating. It's in Egypt. You just kind of lose track of
Yeah.
time.
The
um,
the only thing that's really concrete is you had the laughing, you had the crying,
yes.
and then whatever happens in between. But the laughing came
Yeah.
first, the crying came after, and
Yeah.
then yeah,
Yeah. And then the next day, like I said, the day after every ceremony, this group share and integration work, and everyone seemed to have more cohesive narratives to what they experienced. But I was in such shock and utter amazement that all I could say was, aliens are real. and, and I was just like, I don't know how to process this. It's just so much. You go from, I went from not knowing firsthand the experience of divinity and how vast our universe is and what we are, to having access, and it's like being hit with a fire hose in a good way, and then you're being asked to share what you experienced. And I'm like, I'm just a little teacup, I don't know how to share all that fire hose water with you, sorry.
yeah,
So this
yeah,
is what I mean by like it's been taking years for me to integrate, and
yeah.
it's
But
ongoing.
I've got a feeling that in that integration circle, you must have been smiling ear to ear, no matter how tired you were.
Oh,
And that's where like
totally.
maybe others at this point were like, ah, I want what he had, because you're talking with everybody.
I was, and again, at that point, I was still under the impression that we'd all gone on the same journey to some extent, that we'd all got sucked up in a spaceship, and there was
Right.
yeah,
How I want to know about that. Like when you got the realization that some other people like were really maybe not having a good time still, even though you thought that they had, did it like how did that make you feel? Like to see like, oh my God, like I have had such this beautiful experience and everything. Did you get that realization or it really took a couple of days to be like, really? You're still feeling shitty? Or you know what I mean?
it, yeah, I don't, I do recall, so even after the second ceremony, people having hard times, or just not having the blast off experience, for lack of better language, or really the profound experience. And I didn't have anything but hope for them. I'm like, man, I really hope they have that, because I know what it feels like to not have it. I know like how disappointed I was. Even my demeanor changed going from the second to the third ceremony. Whereas in the second one, I was like, oh man, the first one was so hard. I don't know if I have it in me. By the third one, I was like, I can't wait to do this. Oh my God, let's go back. Let's ride the spaceship. This phenomenal.
And at the same
um,
time, like between the first one and the second, or I'm guessing a lot of your family members were there for you, kind of helping you lift you up. And now at this point, now you could lift them up, I'm guessing, and probably took, I mean, I know you personally, but you probably like you were probably a light source for others at this point, and you were more there for others compared to inwards, like self-pity, I guess, is
I don't, at that time I don't recollect being, everything was so new and fresh to me. And I don't know if I really was a light source. I'd have to ask those people who were around me. I do know that there was plenty of hours spent leading up to each ceremony where we'd, do artwork together and just talk and laugh. And
good.
um,
Yeah.
I know I felt supported, and I'm pretty sure from what I saw, everyone else was feeling supported. Um, but again, there was even I'd say by the end of, we had 4 ceremonies. It was 9 days. By the end, everybody had seemed at least to have had a beneficial experience, even if it wasn't blast off, or the profound universal mystic experience. There's still other ways that ayahuasca works on a person than the ego dissolution.
Right.
So
And on a
yeah,
side note, like that second ceremony, did you go up for seconds or was that just all on
no,
that 3/4?
that was one. And I remember thinking, I'm gonna have to do 2 doses again, and I was so gone. There was no, I missed the call for the second one.
Wow. 3/4 got you blast off. So it really depends on what mother has in store for you. Because now I'm curious because it's a few times you said that that second ceremony was the most profound. So I'm really curious about the third and the fourth on the next podcast when we rejoin. That is crazy. Like to know like the entire picture of what Madre has in store for you. I'm
Yeah.
curious. I'm so curious. I would love to continue personally, but you got things to do. I got things to do myself. Uh, but thank you so much for coming on this podcast. Like you brought me on a journey that I'm forever grateful. Like I understand that you like sharing because you honor your body and your ego and like whatever's you're going through and it's healing as well on you. But I'm telling you, you've brought me on such a beautiful journey, and I'm sure it's going to be the same for the listeners. Oh my God! Wow.
Well, thank you, Dom. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share it. It really is a privilege. And it's also like makes alive what's already there again through memory, right? That experience comes back somewhat. Things that I haven't thought about until reliving the experience with you. So
And
thank you for
as
the
well,
opportunity.
like I just realized that like I had to cancel my trip before because of COVID. So I'm pushing
Mm-hmm.
it to whenever Canada gets less scared. and kind of open up restriction, but it would have been this week. So
Oh,
it's really cool, man. Like I've had a couple of experiences just, and I keep forgetting, but yeah, it would have been this week and next week actually, because I'm gone for 2 weeks. But I would have been in my what are we today? Thursday. That would have been my third ceremony today, probably.
well, I'm glad that I get to act as a substitute for the meantime.
And you are, you are. That's the realization I just got. Man, thank you so much, man.
A pleasure, brother. Thank
Monkey
you
and
so much.
Frank. Monkey and Frank for life. Oh, I'm so excited. All right, see you next time. I love you, man.
All right, brother. Cheers. Love you.